Welcome back to the FIDE World Corporate Chess Championship. I'm Grandmaster Robert Hess. Alongside me, the one, the only Dina Belenkaya. Dina, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Robert. How are you?
It's another fun day. This corporate chess event has been a really fun one because teams from all around the world are taking part. They are representing their companies. They're playing alongside their colleagues, and I think many are having a great time. So I'm happy to be here, Dina, and I think we'll have some great chess as we'll find out who qualifies for the playoffs tomorrow.
Absolutely.
And while we were talking beforehand, you are familiar with many of these teams. There's a team from your native town, right? So your hometown city. So that's really cool. That's a great thing in this division that we're covering now. So let's remind everybody of what's happening here, what the format is, because we're in the pool stage. And after the 3 rounds we're about to see, then will be determined who makes the playoff. Each team, 4 players and minimum 1 male player, minimum 1 female player, and you can have some reserves. They're playing at a time control of 10 minutes with a 2-second increment. So, Dina, that's pretty fast time control for some people who may not be used to playing online.
Yeah, actually a very nice time control. It's like a nice blitz. Like you have some minutes to spend in the opening to make it correctly, not to mess up the lines, the theory, and then the blitz starts. So it's pretty comfortable. It's way more comfortable than Title Tuesday, for instance. So yeah, I personally experienced this time control. I was playing European online chess championship on chess.com, and yeah, I can say that it's a very comfortable one.
It absolutely is. And uh, we have actually games are starting right now. So just get right to that. It looks like on time, which is lovely. It's a huge event, lots of things going on behind the scenes. But we do have Jan Nepomniachtchi's game on screen here. And well, that rating of his opponent says 2166, but we know Pavel. Pavel is not a 2166. He's a very strong grandmaster. This is just the rapid online rating, so clear that well, Pavel doesn't play in this time control just like many of the others. So Dina, we off the start here, we had a French defense. We'll just show everybody how we got to this point. And this is all normal. Capturing on e4, knight to d7, that may block in your bishop. But let's be honest, that French bishop doesn't do much anyway. So the knight comes out to f6. The knight can recapture. And what's your experience like in the French, Dina?
Well, I can for sure say that this is quite a rare line that you do usually in order to avoid the theory, and that's what Pavel does. And Pavel, by the way, is indeed my favorite because he represents the Pulkovo team, the Pulkovo Airport, St. Petersburg, as you mentioned in the beginning. So yeah, even though Jan Nepomniachtchi is a pretty experienced young gentleman, I still root for Pavel.
And pretty experienced. I really like the way you framed that because we all know Jan Nepomniachtchi. He's in a tie for first place in the candidates tournament that decides who goes on to face Magnus Carlsen in the World Championship. So Jan, he is so experienced that he can move his knight many times in the opening. Notice that this knight went from f3, that's 1 turn, 2 turns, knight e5, and once Pavel challenged the knight, third knight move already in the opening, Pavel goes back. He says, I don't want your knight on e5. That's bothering me, taking up space. But this knight on c4 is perfectly fine here. I think that Jan's position, it's slightly better. It's preferable. But isn't black super solid? How are you going to crash through for Jan?
I guess you just need to increase your space advantage by advancing the pawns, the central pawns, the A pawn, and yeah, it's something like in the middle of a little bit better for white and equal, but you cannot call it equal and you cannot call it a advantage for white. So yes, it's kind of a valuation that doesn't exist yet.
I like the way you put that too, because it's true. Where we see these knight on c4 a little bit more advanced than black's knight on f6, the pawn on d4, clearly the best pawn on the board, more advanced than that pawn e6, and black's bishop on c8 is stuck at home behind that pawn, not doing so much. So yeah, white has a slightly preferable position, but it's hard to see where exactly the advantage will come from going forward. So Jan off to a good start, but Pavel, yeah, he's right at home. Let's keep on going. We have many games underway. I see the game between Grandmasters Sergei Ehrenberg and Vladislav Artemiev, another heavyweight matchup. And Dina, this position, I think, looks very nice for white. There's a bishop on b3 slicing across the board towards the enemy king. This pawn structure with these pawns from c7 to e5 and f6 to e5 show that black is very, very solid. So I always get frustrated, Dina. What about you when you see a position like this? You know that white should be better, but how do you break through this? No pawns have been traded.
Yeah, that's not so easy, but what you can see is that the black king, is certainly in danger here. At least he doesn't feel comfortable. Well, it might still be solid for black, but there is certainly a way how to break through.
Yeah, it's right. And this knight came back to f7, trying to continue the solid position. Everything is towards black center. And Artemiev, he is one of the best players in the world. Sergei Ehrenberg, also a very strong grandmaster representing PayPal Bulgaria. And when you're a little bit rusty, like Sergei might be because he's not a full-time chess professional as Artemiev is, it can be difficult to find ways to poke and prod through such a position where maybe you play d5, but that could lock up the center of the board. And as soon as you play d5, black gets f5, right? That's a typical break that you have to look out for. Even though d5 gains a tempo, gains space in the center, it also releases the tension. So I think these decisions are much more difficult to make. And I'm sort of speaking a little bit from experience, Dina, when you don't play as much chess anymore.
Yeah, you definitely do not want to play d5 in this position for white.
Right, because it releases the tension. But if you don't play d5, what do you do?
I guess once again you need to increase the space advantage. Go with a4, a5, preferably maybe bring the rook. Usually when you don't know what to do in any position, you just ask yourself a very simple question. Okay, what is my worst piece? And the worst piece here for white is the rook on a1. So you just play something like queen d2, rook d1. Sounds nice to me.
It's just I always laugh because queen d2, rook d1. You just are asking the right questions. You're figuring out the right strategy here. And even when I get that, I'm like, wait, what next? Because if I ever take on e5, all of black's pieces are aiming at that square. You can even take with the f pawn. So I see these plans. I completely agree with you. But what always gets me, and we have the eval bar off the sides, is like the slightest bit better for white. I tend to feel like I should be have even more an advantage than 0.17 that it says here, because the knight on c4 is more advanced than black's pieces. Everything looks proper for white, whereas black's has this f6, the king on g7 that could be considered as potentially vulnerable, and yet there's no advantage. It's just such
like usually it's really like step by step. You improve piece by piece. So yeah, what concerns your knight on c4, you definitely want to reassure its safe position, like by playing a4, and then you do it little by little. You have to have patience when playing chess.
Yes, that's true. Sometimes humans, we're not so great at being patient. I think we can all agree to that, and we just go for an h4 type of move because we need to attack. But then after h4, like, wait, my king, that becomes weaker. But h4 is could be a plan at some moment. I just wouldn't rush that decision against Artemiev. And speaking of not rushing, Artemiev's been sitting and thinking for a while, so we'll leave him here trying to figure out if he should bring his queen out to e7 to connect his rooks, or if this knight will then reroute to e3 and d5. That's another plan in addition to Dina's a4, a5, and queen d2. White seems to have more to play for at this moment, but Artemiev, he's very strong. He can figure this out. So let's hop on over. Anish Giri playing. He has the white pieces against FIDE master Vladimir Antonenko, and well, he has better control over the center despite the worst looking pawn structure, right? Dina, these double F pawns, some people think double pawns are bad. Here they're really good because double pawns open more files and the E files under white's control.
Absolutely, and you may even have one day the plan of playing breakthrough f5 if you block the e5 square. So there is actually a lot of potential. You can even attack by playing g4, g5. So yes, absolutely, this double f4 pawn is definitely a force, not a weakness.
Yeah, it's something that some newer players who may be watching say, double pawns, no, those stacked pawns, not good. But you just have all the control. Look at everything eyeing this e5 square. Black can't use that. And knight h5 hits the pawn. And I think one of the reasons black plays this is g3 can defend the pawn very simply, and Anish does it quickly, but it closes off this queen. Essentially like when a rook lift happens and the rook gets over to on the third rank, the queen could also do that. And now the attack doesn't feel as strong, or at least you don't see how white's going to go and checkmate you. So I guess Antonenko says, I have nothing better to do. I'll just move back and forth. And Anish says, hey, let's trade those queens off.
That's a very interesting decision. Yeah, definitely surprising one.
I guess it's the space. We keep talking in various positions about the space. He would have taken back with the F pawn. Instead, he just trades queens voluntarily. So there's a 3-on-2 advantage if we cut the board at the C file, right? White has an extra pawn on the queen side. I'm guessing Anish is going to try to create a pass pawn on that side of the board and say, my knight blockades your pawn on D5. My f4 pawn takes away the e5 push. So white's pawns have a little bit more mobility going forward.
Absolutely. And you still want to bring somehow the A rook to the game.
And unfortunately, for the moment at least, you're tied down. And if that could mean that Anish puts a piece on b5 and saves that pawn, but he could also start by bringing his king up. That g4 move, not out of the question. There it is to gain some space. So we've seen so far games that are just about gaining space, where one side has a clear plan and the other side just is not in bad shape, but doesn't have the same objectives. So let's see. We have, well, Magnus Carlsen's game. Kind of hard to disagree with going to that game and playing a player much lower rated. Great opportunity for his opponent. And he plays this line where you have the pawn triangle from b2 to d4 and back over to f2. So, Dina, what would your advice be to a player who's very outrated against the world champion, but has a solid start? Like, what kind of advice, if you could just say, here, let's have a timeout quickly, here's some psychological tips, what would you say?
Well, I would definitely be happy, at least comfortable here with this position with black, because we can see some kind of a London with the bishop on g5, and it is a solid one. So if I were at the place of the black here, I would definitely be happy with the thing that's I shall not die soon. I shall last for some time versus Magnus Carlsen, because he definitely will outplay his opponent, but this will take time. This will take more time when if the position was pretty sharp.
Yes, it's a position that black, you've done everything right so far. Magnus is spending time. We have him on camera here. He hasn't moved yet. It's about even on the clock. That's already an accomplishment, because sometimes when you're outrated, you see that your opponent just moving instantly, and that could be psychologically uncomfortable. But b6, I like that move, getting ready for an eventual c5. You can even play a5. We talked a lot about gaining space. And if you play a5, maybe you go bishop a6, because that bishop on c8 doesn't exactly have the most promising diagonal to work with. So sometimes you try to trade off this bishop on d3, which is a very powerful piece that can attack the black king.
Yeah, definitely developing the last piece that hasn't been yet in the game.
That's right. So Magnus is really, sitting and not moving. I wonder what he's considering at this point. The knight to e5, that would be a very committal decision. So if he's trying to think, do I jump my knight to the center? Sometimes you make a move like that and you really regret it because of the change in pawn structure. So if you played knight e5 and then we get this capture, you can already see that the eval bar starts to favor black. And that's because these double pawns, they can be attacked with a move like knight to d7. And the attack for white with like queen h5, it's a bit slow. So the problems are not worth it just for the hope of getting that attack.
Yeah, I think it's what we can see definitely here is that there is an advantage for psychological advantage for black, that at least the world champion is thinking.
Whoa, and he played 95. So even though the engine bar starts creaking in black's favor a little bit, slightly, that means that Magnus took a deep think. He understood how committal this choice is. And if it is not good, and like sometimes you make this move, all of a sudden you just lose the pawn that gets on e5. And that would be terrible. But Magnus assesses that even if it may be a position where black has some chances now, he likes his chances. He is the world champion. He is playing someone who is much lower rated than he is. But black, so far solid, maybe can take advantage of this and, well, plays bishop b7. I think that so far the player is saying, I don't want to risk anything. I'm just playing a solid game. I know what my setup is like. And maybe this knight will copy white's and jump into the e4 square soon.
Why not? Definitely.
Good question. Why not? Hey, I think that he agrees and is just trying to deal with it. But queen f3, Magnus, all right, he's turning on the jets. I think that this queen is about to head over to h3, and this can be very scary. We tend to trust Magnus when he's playing and that he's seeing good ideas. And if you are at this rating disadvantage, you really like, wait, do I trust him? But you should always be skeptical as a chess player, even if you're playing Magnus. Like, Magnus is doing this, so it's probably pretty decent, but let's evaluate. Let's not just trust it. We need to be objective and not play the opponent. We should play the board.
Yeah, the interesting part about it is that you know for sure that you are way more motivated for this game than your opponent, because being at Magnus place and facing an opponent 800 points less is not it's not that motivating for him. So he definitely
Right.
has to force himself to play his best, and he has the pressure of the whole world watching him.
Certainly does. And we see in this matchup between Kindred and ByteDance, and we want to bring attention to a tweet we saw yesterday, which was really great to see. And this is how much this can mean to people. Look at Oracle tweeting about their player, Santosh Hassan Sampath, who played against Magnus Carlsen, calling it a once in a lifetime experience. It certainly was. So, a great thing to see where the players, they just are so thrilled to have the chance to play against Magnus. I know there's been some talk like, why are these top players participating? Shouldn't it just be people who work at the company? Look at how happy they are, and it's just a great chance for. It's a once in a lifetime experience. It really is. How often does anybody get to play Magnus? Not very, unless you're a top 20 player in the world.
Indeed, it's an opportunity that you can't miss.
Yes, and well, how crazy would it be if Magnus lost a game to one of these players, right? You're just like, oh, I'm playing in my corporate. Your friend calls you, hey, are you have any plans for the weekend? Oh, I'm just playing in this corporate World Chess Championship. It's gonna be fun. I'm hopefully play people around my strength, inactive players. And then the next thing you know, you're texting all your friends, I'm playing the world champion. Imagine if you can at least draw the world champion in a game. That would be the most exciting thing ever. You don't seem to be too optimistic about that possibility.
Sometimes it's just a dream, and then one day it comes true.
Yeah, that's true. So we'll see. We'll of course come back to this at some point, but right now, Black is deep in the think tank trying to figure out how vicious is this checkmating attack because it could be scary. So let's keep on going. I'm just going to click on I have many games open. I'm going to click on a random game here. So let's go to this game. Oh, okay, Mad Joe. See, we have this. That's a problem. Those are rooks that are under attack.
That's the right moment to click on this game.
Yeah, I'm gonna move on because it hurts to see when rooks are in this kind of situation. And unfortunately, actually, if we go back a move here, Rook C2 was played, which walks into this idea. So that's unfortunate. You try not to put your pieces on the same color as your opponent's bishop, especially in opposite color bishop position. So a one move blunder, unfortunately, that loses some material. So let's go back to Jan Nepomniachtchi against Pavel Anisimov because I just saw that at the corner of my eye, and Jan is doing what Jan does best:
attacking.
And H5. So, Dina, a move like H5, I think is very difficult for many people to play because they're told not to push pawns in front of their king. And by the way, 25 seconds for Pavel? Oh,
wow.
No, this is no fun.
He's still holding somehow. Yeah, you definitely play H5 only if you've calculated it all through. And I guess here there is a way to Queen H6 would not work, so there was a way to save it. Where they're playing E5.
Right, Queen H6, there's E5, so playing G4 first, trying to rip open the position, and maybe you sacrifice the bishop, Queen H6, pawn takes H5, and go for a checkmate, but Jan's up so much time that he should really calculate that doesn't backfire, because sometimes you sacrifice a piece thinking you're going to go checkmate your opponent, and then it clearly doesn't work, and then you're just down a piece. So if Jan is indeed going to play a move like Queen H6, which I think works here, he should calculate it for a little bit, because Queen H6, E5, you don't just want to give away your bishop, but you see, look at that evaluation go all the way up there. Clearly, white is doing well. So Queen H6, E5, and what's he going to do, Dina? There he goes.
Yeah, that was an easy one. Unfortunately for Pavel, his position seemed to be holdable just before.
Yes, and
although in the practical way, it's with this time, it's pretty quick death here.
Yeah, because the king has nowhere to go. Queen H7 checkmate is the threat. If you take on G6, the queen takes back, and the king is forced in the corner. And you're going to see a checkmate where this rook comes to G1, and the queen delivers a mate either on G7 or on the H file. There's actually no way out of this. But I think Jan is demonstrating an important lesson for everybody. That even if he is completely winning, he probably knows he's completely winning. He's still spending his time, because you make some inaccurate move, your advantage could go away. He knows that he is about to win this game. Just be ultra precise when you have an extra 3+ minutes in the clock.
That might actually have been a new trait that he has learned recently from making so many mistakes when playing the moves too fast, because Jan is actually known to be a bullet style player and making a lot of mistakes when playing too fast.
That's right. He has in classical tournaments as well. So this is a good thing that he slowed down. He's playing on a team. This is not just about his game, but he does deliver a victory for the team because Queen G7 is checkmate, and otherwise Queen H6. You can't stop both, and you can barely stop one. So that's just how the game would have ended if not on time. So let's keep on going here. We have so many games. Let's see. Anish Giri, we're at his game earlier. Okay, now the end game is up a pawn for white, and his pieces are just dominating the board. This knight on d4 hasn't left. It's just such a good knight in the blockading square.
Yeah, that's a perfect knight when playing versus an isolated pawn. And black pieces seems to be extremely passive. So yeah, a very clear advantage for whites.
And f6 check. If you take with the rook, there's rook h7. The bishop is
And
open now.
Rook.
Yeah, that's it. There it goes. And the king. You know why Anish won this game? He brought his king up. He used it as a weapon in the end game. The king is not going to be attacked, so you can use it to your advantage, and that's what Anish did. He wins the game. And I know that there's other very strong players on the Optiver team. We see that with the white pieces here, David Pardo Simon, he has up one pawn and looks like he has a great position.
We witness once again an isolated pawn, which is not blockaded yet. So yeah, if there was a chance to bring this knight from h5 to d4, that would be just amazing.
I don't know how. I'm trying to figure out. Like, I guess you got to go g4 and then bring that knight around. Takes a little bit of time, but I guess the knight on h5 is really annoying for black to deal with because you can't double rooks.
You can even once prepare the f4 passed pawn,
That's
and
true.
then the knight would become a real force.
And it's interesting is that it's the advantage is there for white. We see the evaluation bar, and we don't have the moves, so it seems like a lot of moves will be good for white. But sometimes you make just this careless move and your whole advantage goes away. So I think that you do need to still be a bit precise, but I think you and I agree, white's position is super good here. It just should be a win.
I actually think that there is a lot of potential here, like on the practical level. There is not such a chance to make a big mistake here. Okay, you can be not exactly precise, but no chance for making mistakes here, to my concern.
Yes, I agree. So f4 played, your idea, great. If you take on h5, rook takes now, hitting this h6 pawn. You're also hitting the pawn on d5 if this g pawn takes on f4. So it looks like white is about to pick up another pawn. Black also has no time. It's not a great situation to be in when you're trying to defend against such a strong player, an international master. So yeah, I think that Optiver is going to be happy. They're going to take 2 games to start in this match, and they're going to try to keep pushing towards the top. I'm going to just try to look around here to see. This is Optiver's board 4, and unfortunately, with the black pieces, it looks like she's in trouble because the rook landed on a7. That means this pawn on c7 is going down, and black's also down a lot of material. So Optiver is going to lose on this board.
Unfortunately for them.
Yes, and I'm just going to just keep going, clicking on games that catch my eye. I won here. We have what is, at least by the evaluation bar, a pretty even position, but I look at this and I think that both sides have chances. What do you think, Dina, when you look at this?
Yeah, this is a pretty double-edged endgame because from white side, white has a passed pawn on a file, which is pretty good for the endgame because it's it's the passed pawn of the border. But at the same time, yeah, the king is in danger. Even though it's an endgame, the king on h3 could be in danger, and the rook. Oh, the rook on d2 is extremely active, so white needs to be extremely careful here.
I agree, especially with under a minute left for both sides.
There is actually a mate hanging there, something like bishop f1 and rook h2. So that, like, let's say something like knight f8 trying to exchange pieces would not work because of the immediate mate. Surprise.
Good find. Dina's been doing her tactics. That's a checkmate right there. So you have to be very careful because knight f8 would be a fun move to play. And whoa, bishop d3, knight to b6. You see black's advantages going up, but the players don't know that. They can sense, okay, I like my chances, but neither player knows that black is, well, bordering on winning at this point.
Yeah, I guess the knight needs to come to d4 and then to f3, and it'll be extremely dangerous.
But knight d4 here, this bishop takes f5, a cool tactic.
Wow, amazing.
Because there's a pin here, and 13 seconds, he played d5.
He sees that.
I like that move. Good pawns here. And, well, this bishop has to go back. And I'm even looking at knight g5 check at some moment. Kind of similar checkmate plan. Uh-oh. Dropping that pawn. And then the knight. Knight takes f4, still hanging. Ooh, neither player sees it though. But that's still a good move by black. Just taking advantage of the pin.
Like for black, there is still advantage.
Yeah, because sometimes you miss your opportunity to take a pawn on f4, which wins a piece, and then you don't have a second chance. But he actually is just.
It's actually a third chance already.
I lost count. And you can take that knight.
No way! King will protect it. Oh,
but there we go. There we go. Here? Finally, you take something.
Pass pawn. 2 pass pawns. Yeah, finally he takes.
And now you're 3 pass pawns. Yeah, this is clearly a win for black here. And in time trouble, being super accurate, very difficult, but black had a nice looking position, an aggressive one, and ends up winning the game. Even though when we tune in, it's the eval bar said slight advantage for white. So we've seen lots of good things happen so far. I'm just gonna click on.
I guess as long as you have an advantage, even if you don't find the best moves, but you still keep the advantage, it's all fine. Yes. And that's what black did, even if they didn't take the f4 pawn.
That's right. And this is another game in the Optiver match. It looks like Optiver is going to win because Javier with the black pieces is up 2 pawns and also up just the world on the clock. I mean, so much extra time here. So it's going to be a 3-1 finish, it looks like, for Optiver. And I'm trying to look. What other games are still going? There are plenty left. So I'm just going to see here. Let's click on this game. It's Maria Muzichuk. Okay, we have a game here where opposite color bishops, Dina, but black is up a pawn, yet it feels at first glance like white's king is safer, tucked in the corner, and this bishop on d5. But I like that move, rook e3, because if you're starting to feel unsafe, trading a pair of rooks seems like a good decision.
But I guess it's all about the pieces, and here we clearly see that, yeah, well, the black rook coming to a2 might be a lot of danger. Well, the bishop on d5 seems extremely stronger than the bishop on f6, so I definitely do not understand, as well as you from the first glance, why black is being better here. But I guess there's the reason. Might be the pawn on d4.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
the pass pawn could be dangerous, and if we count the number of pawns, we're pawn up.
Right, but it's funny because we both acknowledge extra pawn d4 is maybe that extra pawn looks good, but -2, I don't think that Maria thinks that way, right? That's the difference when you're playing and you versus seeing the evaluation, because she's like, I should be doing well. That would be my mindset. Black, it looks like you're doing well, you're up a pawn, but you don't see a clear path forward, and you see that white's rooks are teamed up here, at least causing you some problems. But I like this rook on a6, the queen on e7, really nice move, maybe trade off one set of the rooks, and that could help ease black's fears, the concerns about her king on g7.
Absolutely.
So I think that this is a position where she can play pretty freely. She's doing well in the clock, 2 minutes and 40 seconds with that extra pawn. And this is a grandmaster battle in this pool here. So
that's that exact case when the position, the evaluation from the engine doesn't correspond to the practical situation on the board. You don't feel this -2 when you're playing white here.
Yeah, it's true. You think, okay, how can I get chances? That's how you're thinking, not in terms of the evaluation. And look, queen c8 already, direct threat. Where does that rook go? It can be a bit nervous because do I put my rook on b6? Do I put my rook on d6? I need to keep my rook here.
Oh my.
Oh no.
Rook.
Oh no.
This is a perfect strategy when you're playing blitz. You just continue attacking all over there, and sooner or later your opponent won't see.
Yeah. Oh gosh, because she was playing such good defense there, and she went for the offense all of a sudden, and then the rook is just hanging, and there's no follow-up. Okay, wow. She plays d3. It's still not over. I mean, yes. Well, actually, queen takes f6 is a possibility here because the rook does defend there. So
queen takes, and then d2.
Ah, so you can just go and get a. It's
rook
funny.
Takes and d2.
Yeah, it looks like. Oh, wait a second. I can.
You cannot play bishop f1. Okay, you can bishop f3. Will take and rook takes f3.
See, that's how games turn around real quick. Good eye, Dina. Good eye. So you can't take that bishop on f6, which now makes it look a little bit uncomfortable for white. Even though you're up a rook, you need to be very careful because that pawn is running.
Yeah, they have 2 minutes to come up with a move. Queen a2.
That's a good move.
Seems to be a very practical decision.
Yeah, and it's funny, if White did not have the time, did not have 2 minutes plus, I think you could see Queen takes f6 because it's not clear what's immediately wrong with it. And when you take on f6, you're hitting the f7 pawn, but this d pawn is so strong that's Black's only form of compensation. So making sure that pawn can't push is the first step. And if you take on f7, this queen can take back. So be careful about decisions like this because if you take the queen, oh, I win your queen, yeah, well then you lose this bishop,
Once
this
again,
rook rather, and then the bishop, and then this d pawn is the strongest uh, pawn and doing very well. So you would have to take
it
on
will be
f7.
totally losing for White, even though they were queen up.
Yes. So you'd have to actually take the rook on e1 because if the bishop takes, then you take the queen. But this is fancy tactics. We'll see if it's played because rook f7 is actually a very good move to trade off pieces and take this played. Take this rook after. So far, it's been a nice game from White's perspective since we tuned in. It started off great position for Maria. She unfortunately hung her rook on a6, and now White is making sure that he can get a winning advantage without the same risk. Yeah, this looks pretty over. To be honest.
Yeah, it's kind of an accident still. Unfortunately, Marie is a professional. She finds until the end, but when the game is over, she might regret it a lot.
Yeah, it was such a good. Oh.
Oh no!
So
What
Queen
happened?
f2. Here comes Queen e1 ideas.
Oh
And how do you actually
wow!
look at this? The game's never over till it's over. I honestly was like thinking,
Wow!
oh, it looks really bad. She must be real upset. But this is so difficult to win when the opponent's a passed pawn like this. And what was the mistake?
Here we go. We just we're almost about to switch to the next game.
Yeah, and what was even the mistake? Like this position, d2 played. It's +7, and rook d1 is the most obvious move, right? Of course, rook to d1, and yet rook d1 blocking the pawn. The advantage goes away because of queen f2. Chess is just a wild game. So queen e1 check.
And now how we okay, Queen e1, amazing because the bishop is protecting. Yeah, I was thinking of something like bishop e5, trading the mate, but I guess that would be bishop g2. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh wow. That's actually how you could even win game. It's a good call, Dina, where you just say, I'm not going to focus on my pass one. I'm going to go for checkmate. But this bishop,
Yeah, there's the
thankfully.
bishop g2. And they say
Although,
when there's
wait,
yeah,
but it's
there is still
not
something here. Queen h.
right.
Okay, nice.
You're going out for the checkmate. I'm going to follow your lead because h3 in comes the
Queen
queen to
g3.
g3.
Yes, incredible.
This is getting
Amazing.
scary for white all of a sudden.
I'm not sure if there's a mate here. There might be a perpetual.
Right, you can just check.
For sure, but at least you have a draw with black, which is already an achievement in such a position.
Wow. And okay, she's thinking she can play queen e1 check, but bishop e5 now looks clearer because
you know what? Yeah, sorry. I'm pretty sure that even if she sees this line, she can possibly tell herself, "Oh, this is a draw, and I don't want to draw. I want to win in this game."
Yeah, and maybe she does. I don't know her team situation off top of my head. I haven't seen the results. Maybe we could find it out. But if maybe she needs to play for more, that could be possible. But if a draw is needed by white, could just take that queen there and trade everything off. So white can't lose the game if you take the queen when it lands back on e1. But watch, okay, you have to be super careful about that bishop e5 idea.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It still seems quite secure for black. So in the worst case, we still have a perpetual, but we can even try to see something more. And I guess in such...
Wait, you can't go bishop g2 because queen h5 mate. Oh my gosh. Dina.
Rook h1?
Rook h1. Okay, you're...
Is it the only move?
And then queen...
Rook d2. Oh wow, we already got back the...
Okay, so queen d3 wins the b3 pawn, and then all of a sudden, black has another pass pawn.
Amazing. Amazing.
Wait,
yes.
queen f5, king h4, queen h5 checkmate.
In two, checkmate. Oh, she missed it.
But she has 10 seconds left. This game has been absolutely wild. Okay, there's no more mate. This is a check, and the check that would win the bishop, so if the queen comes to defend, that's a good move. I think this is about to be a draw. Both players are probably nervous as heck.
Oh no. Wow.
Yeah. Oh, chess is such a wonderful game. And when you're playing just bullet chess.
Checkmate in two. She missed that. And you know what? It's 2 seconds increment. It's pretty a lot, to be
Yeah.
honest. Especially for
Yes.
those players, they're experienced to play 3+0, 3+1, but 3+2 is a lot.
It is a lot, but if you are not used to playing online, you just start feeling nervous when you see the clock ticking down that way, and you see the milliseconds. So it's like, okay, I got to move. I can't freeze, and so you just make one. And I think, Dina, if we go back to this position here, once the king went to h3, it looks like white was playing for a win. But sometimes you play for a win, and you're really playing for a loss because you're getting your king in big trouble. So rook takes
Yes,
d2.
indeed.
Queen g1, queen d3 was good, and king g4. I don't think that white ever turned off the winning switch. Like, first, white was worse. We came in, it was like -2. Black was doing really well up a pawn. Then white was winning because Maria hung her rook on a6. And then white said, okay, I'm going to win this game. I'm going to win this game. And then you make a move like king g4, which under other circumstances, you would never make this move. Why is your king going out to g4? You're walking into danger. King g2 is much safer, of course. Yeah, I mean,
And here we go. Yeah, that was a total mess here with the checkmate in 2. I guess you will see it in her nightmares.
yeah, hopefully nobody tells her about this until after today's rounds are done. If you play one game a day, you can be told afterwards, and then you have a whole day to recover. The next round starts in not too long from now, so you're going to want to forget about this. This game was a nightmare. This blundering the rook on a6, then white playing rook to d1, a lot of missed opportunities for the players. And this one, it's a mate in 2. So you think, how could a player as strong as Maria Muzichuk miss this? The answer likely comes down to the fact that she didn't have that much time, and she was down a rook just a few moves ago, so she wasn't playing for a win. It's really hard to make that flip in your mind of, oh, I'm just trying to hold and try to survive somehow, to wait, now I can just go win. So I get it. She went queen d3 to take b3 and essentially pre-move that mentally. Dina, would you say that's kind of a fair assessment, or should she still have found the mate? I think
she should have still found the way. I'm pretty sure, like, knowing Maria, how ambitious she is, I'm pretty sure even when she blundered the rook, the moment that her pawn got to d2, she knew she had chances to fight for a win. So I'm absolutely sure once she sees it, she will be very, very frustrated. Yeah, and she's a world X champion after all.
Right. It's 14 seconds left. Crazy things happen in time trouble, so it's understandable. We've seen all the top players in the world make mistakes and with no time on the clock. But yeah, queen f5. I think a lot of this came unexpectedly to her. She probably, to some extent, was almost going to resign, like once you dropped her rook. And she did fight hard, but yeah, you have to play queen f5 check, obviously.
Now that I think about it, don't you think that it might have been a pre-move, queen takes b3, because she didn't expect king g4? We actually saw it quite fast, queen b3.
She played, let's go back here. Let me see. She played queen takes b3 in 5 seconds. So she actually spent time before taking
she did spend time, yeah.
Yeah. So I just, there's a lot going through the players' heads, like a lot swirling, like, oh, is queen a7 check? Is that going to be a problem for me, or what's the deal? But yeah, it's a shame, but we don't want to harp on too much, because I know I've missed plenty of checkmated ones even when the time starts getting low. So no questions from me about it. It just happens. And I'm just trying to see if we have more games. It looks like the games are done for now. So, well, Dina, it's been a fun round. I can't believe we ended on that note where we saw two grandmasters slugging it out and missed checkmates, hanging rooks. But that's the nature of rapid chess for you, right? It gets to blitz chess, it gets to bullet chess, and crazy things happen.
Yeah, that's the nature of chess playing online.
Especially, but it happens in person too, right? When you're playing speed chess, pieces actually go flying off the board, right? Someone makes a quick move and slams the piece down, and then the rook ends up and over 3 aisles away. So less piece banging, but still lots of craziness.
Yeah, and at least playing online is not as dangerous as playing real blitz over the board, because in this case, as you say, pieces fly everywhere. Sometimes they land into your eyes and might be dangerous. Yeah, this is the pleasure of playing online.
Sounds like you're speaking from experience a little bit. Do you have a horror story about playing blitz and some pieces flying at you?
I think it's more about bullets, especially when you take some pieces and you cannot even capture them with your hands, so you just flew them away from the they flew away from the chessboard, and then you try to what you usually do, you just press the clock and you let your opponent put all the pieces back into order on the chess game, where on the board where like it's his time, which is pretty forbidden in the rules.
Exactly. And well, considering there's a world championship title, a world corporate championship, this is a lot at stake here. So it's good that the players, they're working hard, they're trying their best, they get a break. So Dina, we're also going to take a break, and we will return in a bit. You get a break now, but the next round begins. I'm going to ask. I don't want to leave people hanging, just to make sure what time the next round is. I should have. In 50 minutes. Okay, can't do math. It is in 50 minutes. It's 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. Dina, what time is that in Europe?
It's almost 4:40, so it's a nice moment to take a short break and then get back with even more exciting blunders and a lot of energy.
Absolutely. We'll see you soon, everybody. welcome back, everybody, to the FIDE World Corporate Chess Championship. Dina, we had a very exciting round four, 2 rounds to go to determine which teams will win their respective pools. And we've seen some leaders take their aim at the title and other teams trying to catch up. So, what do you think we're going to see in the final 2 rounds? Nerves? Are we going to see teams with the strong players? They going to find their form and win? How do you see this event playing out?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the last couple of rounds is going to be the most stressful ones, and we shall see a lot of blunders, a lot of nerves. Unfortunately, when you play chess, you need to be cold blood, and if you don't, if you think about the result, it can become pretty messy.
That's definitely true. And this is a tournament with people representing their companies, and sometimes that means that there's an IM just hanging out at the company every single day doing their job. And then there's an event like this that comes along, and you're like, yes, we get to show off our might. And then sometimes you have these people who don't play in too many over the board tournaments, so their rating may not be stabilized. It may say 1700, but really they've been studying, they've been practicing, and they play like a 2000 plus player. So it's very tricky. And as time goes on, some of that rust, it wears off, and maybe the players who have been playing for a long time, their experience will show.
They will definitely fight with the best they can, and even though it's a kind of a friendly tournament, it's still a competition. And those of them who are not professional chess players right now, they certainly were before, so they know what it is, a game of chess. Wherever it is and wherever you play, you still play, you do your best, and you fight until the end.
Definitely. And we have a couple games to show. There was this critical moment in the game between Dimitri Yacovenko, who needs little introduction to the world of chess, formerly up at like 2750, has rating has decreased a bit, but still an exceptional player. And in this position against Jan Sodoma here, it's an grandmaster with black, international master with white. The position is complicated, right? Where black has this passed pawn in the making on the queen side, but white has an extra pawn on the king side. So the move that was played here, Dina, was queen to b6. And I think we can understand that after queen c7, a fatal error was made with knight to c4, allowing the queen trade and the knight hopping away from the action. How do you, how do you think about a position like this so that when our viewers are playing, they don't make a similar mistake?
Yeah, well, you look at this position, you definitely do not want to trade the queens because it's an endgame, and black has a pair of bishops, a passed pawn that is ready to queen. It looks pretty dangerous, and the only thing that you are trying to find here is how to trick your opponent to make some checks, some attacks with a queen, but definitely do not trade those.
Yeah, I completely agree. And queen f2 back is a good move, pinning this pawn. Yeah, black can play f4. The game is still really complex. It's anybody's game, honestly. But you can see it says zeros, and as soon as knight c4 is played, it plummets because black is winning all of a sudden. And Dimitri didn't need to ask himself any questions. He said, let's just trade queens. Here comes b3. And after the knight takes, well, you can't even stop that pawn. And if he took on b3, I think he maybe white overlooked that a3 is the way to go.
Yeah, he absolutely must have missed this pawn breakthrough and miscalculated this whole situation. Otherwise, he would never make such a choice.
Yeah, and definitely time travel played a part because it's very likely in your head you think, okay, b3, take. Oh, that's not that big a deal. And black is still for choice, but as you can see, it's not nearly as strong because this pawn can be stopped. Bishop can come to d3. This knight can maybe come to c4, a4, depending on what black does. And that pawn is not queening just yet, but that's a typical pawn break, right? You play b3, and after pawn takes, we have to remind ourselves we don't have to recapture just because oftentimes we will make a trade and recapture. Here, a3 is stronger because outside passed pawns are very difficult and in this case, impossible to contain.
Yeah, as they say, we do not play draws here. We play chess, and captures are not obliged.
Exactly. And that's a very good comparison, one that I was thinking about, but that's true. You do not have to recapture, and that's a typical way to spring free a passed pawn. A3 pawn would promote. So Dmitry Yacovenko gets another victory. And we had another game that I had my eye on when we were in break, because this is a position where Karolina Olsarova, representing CSOB, the Czech bank, the position for black is really good at this point, but it's not losing for white, nothing of the sort. But it's kind of hard to find a move. So I guess, Dina, when I was looking at this during our break, I was just thinking, how can we advise people when they have a position like this, not a single piece has been traded? How do you go about thinking about a position and trying to come up with a plan?
It's all about maneuvering and plans, and the person who has the right plan, who fills the position, can overplay the other one, no matter what is the rating. It's all about the experience and understanding about the structure, the pawn structure here. What we see, it's kind of a king's Indian, I would say, for white.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
definitely, yeah, and we can see that the center is still kind of undecided. So we can see either captures or d4. So as long as the center is not closed, we cannot afford ourselves to play f4. So
Hmm.
it makes a lot of pressure here for white in order to understand what to do next.
No, that's a great way of putting it. That Black has the better pawn center because two pawns up on the fifth rank. White just has one pawn on the fourth rank in the center, and it's hard to come up with a plan for White. The knight on h4. Are you going to bring it to f5? Can it just be captured? And really, there is one, two, three, four attackers on this e4 pawn. So there's a lot of pressure in the center, and that's actually what decided the game. Is right here, White went queen f3, which is a move that does make sense. You want to bring your knight to f5 and keep that protected. But after pawn takes e4, we saw a series of trades, and now bishop takes e4 was played because the bishop was defending when the queen was back on e2. Now
Yeah,
that's
it's
not
the
the
basic
case.
overcharge.
Mm-hmm. And too many pieces are hanging where you get the rook here, and instead of queen takes e4, you think, oh, I get two minor pieces for a rook and a pawn. That's the typical trade that's good for the minor pieces. This king at the end of his line, 6 moves down the road. That's the problem. Is there's a back rank issue more than anything. So that queen on f3 was tied in two directions, to the e4 square and the d1 square, stopping the mate. Overloaded queen. That's a typical tactic.
Yeah,
So
that was a painful one, I guess, for white.
we all make these kind of mistakes, especially in quicker time controls where, if we just go back when not a single piece had been traded at this point, you think, well, back rank problems. What do you mean
I
back rank
guess
problems?
I guess the worry here for white was also because, like, you see, okay, how many attackers you've calculated? There are 5 attackers. How many defenders? There are 5 defenders. Like, there is the pawn, knight, queen, rook, and the bishop. But you can see that there is the queen on a6 that is actually willing to trade with the queen a2, and that would eliminate one defender. And then here we go, the rook on d1 on d8, threatening to take the rook on d1. So it makes like 3 defenders in the end of the day. So there was definitely a lot of pressure on this e4 pawn, tactical pressure, and the white couldn't make it work.
That's a good point, that actually there was a direct tactical threat on the e4 square, which might mean that white needed to do something very direct. Perhaps it was a knight f5 type of move.
Or even
To
the ugly f3.
Whew, oh, it hurts to see that move, but a move like that, yeah, maybe it keeps the material. But yeah, as you said, the ugly move, that looks difficult to play. But White's position is that difficult. It is even material. Not a single piece has been traded, and yet the engine, as we see here, really likes Black because of the activity and the direct tactical threat in the e4 square. So positions like this, you have to be extra careful. And I think that Carolina, the high rated player, she got a very nice position in the opening, and she was able to convert with ease. So 2 fun games there. One was an end game. One was just a complex, just clogged position out of the opening. But either way, the chess is good. And while we are been focused on the chess, let's go to the standings just to see who's leading, which companies will be trying to win their pools here. Spare in Group A, and European Investment Bank. Those are the 2 teams at the top there with all 8 and a possible 8 match points. But look at Spare with 14 and a half game points. That's the first thing we look at because that's how you win your group. Is it already too late for the other teams, Dina?
Okay, let's count. How many points do we get for a win?
So the first, actually, it's board points is the first thing we look at. So 14 and a half, right? Their board points is that's you can lose a match and still win even if somebody else wins all their matches.
So 1 round is not enough, but here we go. We have still 2 more rounds. So there might be a chance to get Spare. I guess the Spare team is pretty strong with Jan Nepomniachtchi on the first board. Spare is this Sberbank, but we shall not confuse it with the Sberbank Trade Union.
Right, and that team, as you said, Jan Nepomniachtchi board 1. They have a very strong FIDE Master Kadatsky on board 2. They have International Master on board 3, and even their board 4, a 2250 Women's International Master. That team, they're not going to lose too many games.
Absolutely not.
So it looks like Spirit doing really well, although in that pool you see European Investment Bank. They're going to try to beat them head to head. Tough matchup in the Group B. Granke Bank, Yandex. Now that is a clash of titans.
Yeah, the Granke Bank is well known for being a sponsor of the Granke Open, annual Open, but as well as the Baden-Baden, one of the strongest teams in German Bundesliga for both men and women. So that's a big name. Like Yandex is a big company, but it's not that known in chess. At least it wasn't before. Maybe now that with the first chess world corporate championships, we shall see a lot of new games and a lot of new teams soon in the world, in the European club cups, and so maybe future stars.
Oh, that's definitely.
But but for now, Yandex is certainly not as known as Granke Bank.
No, but right now they have Dimitri Yacovenko leading the charge, and there is an exact tie, right? They both have 13 board points throughout the 4 rounds. They have all 8 match points. They've won their matches, so they're completely tied, and they're about to play one another. So on board 1, we will see Georg Meyer taking on Dimitri Yacovenko, so that will be a lot of fun. And we will see, if other teams like the Erste group there will have a chance. But I think between Granke and Yandex, one of those two is going to come out on top. And in the C group, you have Morgan Stanley Hungary, very strong team filled with international masters and strong players from top to bottom. And you have Rossetti Volga trying to catch up along with Optiver. That's the Anish Giri team. If they can start winning all their games, they have a chance to catch up. They're only 1.5 points behind Morgan Stanley with 8 games to go.
Yeah, I guess the weakness of Optiver team is their board number 4 with a player 1000 rating.
Right.
But he has still got 1 point out of 4, so it's a good achievement so far.
Yeah, she's a pretty new player. I've talked to Anish, and Anish was telling me that they have their. Well, Anish is playing on board 1, so Anish Giri needs no introduction. But then they have an international master and another 2300 plus player. So they have very strong title players in the top 3 boards. And their 4th board is somebody who's newer to chess, but they had a training session. Optiver loves chess. They attend the Weikonzee tournament every single year, with the exception of this year because of the pandemic. But they're dedicated to chess. Anish has had a relationship with the company for many years now. So they're big fans of the game, and they work hard. So we'll see if they can catch up. And in Group D, we see that if we show the next pools here, we have Sparebank Trade Union. You said not to mistake Spare and the Trade Union. Oh, these we'll update these to get them after the next round.
Yes,
but
absolutely. Needs to make a difference between Sparebank and Spare, but Spare is actually Sparebank. Yeah, it's the new word for Spare. Spare is the new abbreviation for Sparebank.
Right, and there it is. Look at our producers, so helpful there. So the Trade Union, they actually are not in first place, but they're just a half point behind. And it looks like Dassault Systems there is in first place with 14 board points, doing really well. Although Slav Group has Ilya Smirin, that team in 3rd place. Grandmaster Ilya Smirin from Israel is leading their team. So very good chances. And then I see in 4th place, Rosewood Technologies. They're in South Africa, if I'm not mistaken, and they also have a strong team. They have a chance, but it looks like at the top there, the teams are, one of those top 2 teams have the best chances because they'll likely play each other, and the winner of that match will likely come out of Group D. Group E, we were just talking about the Czech Bank. We saw Karolina Olsarova's game. She's on board 4, and she's a very strong player. So, it's only a half a point lead there too, though. So Group E is wide open. So Kaspersky as well. That Kaspersky, they've sponsored the
World Championship.
The World Championship, right, in 2016.
Yeah,
right?
Indeed, between Magnus Carlsen and Sergei Karakin.
Right. Sorry, go ahead, Dina.
Yeah, in the United States.
You're right. In New York, in my home city, I was there every single round, and their advertising, their branding was all over the place, but it was great to see that they were sponsoring chess. And of course, Tata, when you hear see the company Tata there, you think Tata Steel, Vaikunze, and there's also the Tata Steel event that was in India as part of the Grand Chess Tour, one of the events. So a lot of companies that really do give a lot to chess. And in Group F, have not looked too deeply at their games, but the State Bank of Mongolia up at the top, filled with many of the best players from the country. It's good to see Mongolia putting together a team because, Dina, as we know, they have so many strong players.
Absolutely, we can see 3 title players here in their team, and as you said, one of the best players of the country. That seems to be a very solid team.
And they've taken an interesting approach, actually. They've put a 1,400 player on board 2 and international master Kuyag on board 3. So they kind of stacked their boards in a way where some of their lower rated players are on higher boards than title players. And that's an interesting strategy that we see at Olympiads. I know the Azerbaijan team in particular, they put Mamedyarov on lower boards so that he could win a bunch of games, whereas maybe someone who's slightly lower rated will hold on a higher board. So it's an interesting strategy overall when teams do that.
Indeed, yeah, it's a kind of testing other ways to get through all this concurrence.
Yeah, exactly. And while we've been talking about the standings, about the companies, about the chess, we want to remind everybody as call to action, just bring your attention to the ongoing charity event. FIDE has been involved with 3 projects: Chess in Education, Chess for People with Disabilities, and the FIDE Chess Veteran Support Program. If you're able to, please consider a donation using the command donate in chat or by clicking the panel below the stream. And please, if you can, do get involved. This is for charity. This is why the teams are playing. And there is a world championship title at stake, but it's trying to help these initiatives and do right. So thank you so much for all of you who are able to and have been donating. So Dina, I believe for now, there's about 10 minutes until the round begins. We're going to take a quick break. And when we return, we will be back with round 5 of the pool stage. are back, ready for round 5 of the FIDE World Corporate Chess Championship. Dina, we have some great matchups in store. We're about to find out which teams are going to head into the final round of the group stage with the lead. We can bring up those pairings and talk about them as the matchup is about to get underway. See this top left, Group A, B to the next, C, and so on. Look at some of these players here, Dina. We have Jan Nepomniachtchi taking part. Dimitri Yacovenko against Georg Meyer in Yandex versus Grenke. We have International Master Bergadzi taking on Grandmaster Ilyushin there on the Group C. Korobov against Twanberg. I mean, these are names that are just like the who's who of chess, really strong players all around. But every board is equally important. So I want to stress that every single board has equal weight to the match situation. And it could come down to board 4s, not just board 1s.
Absolutely. We will witness the last two decisive rounds, and this is the last moment to trying to stop the leaders. That's gonna be pretty exciting.
Yes, indeed. And like we keep saying, we will have some great matchups. Georg Meyer against Dimitri Yacovenko. That could take place in the Grenke Chess Classic. We mentioned how Grenke, they support chess, Baden-Baden Club, and the Grenke tournament. So we have liftoff, it seems. I see some games starting here. And the first game that comes up is Grandmaster Ilyushin against International Master Bergadzi. And I can read Cyrillic, Dina, so I got it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm genuinely impressed.
Yeah, I got it. So
I was hoping for you to need some help, but here we go. You did it on your own.
Oh, well, every now and then my Russian abilities can come through. This is a very important moment. So for some of our newer viewers, castle. I love it, a pawn sacrifice. But pawn takes d4, knight takes d4 is a typical blunder, thinking that's a free pawn because, hey, my queen lands here, it's not under attack. When pieces are in line with one another, bishop b5 check, get that piece out of the way with force, you win the queen on d4. So that pawn was not actually hanging, but other plans were made by Bergadzi. He actually says, here, have my pawn. Look at, what is this, Dina? Explain this to me. He keeps giving a pawn. Is he just, what is this opening?
This is a typical French defense and a very nice pawn sacrifice. Yes, you definitely want to confuse your opponent. Perhaps it's a preparation and some rare line you want to, you want to get the other one from the book, out of the book.
It seems that it's justified based on the evaluation. Grandmaster Ilyushin says, I don't want that. And sometimes these traditional grandmasters, they say, I'm not just going to take your pieces. That gives you too quick play. And just to half move back here, the evaluation was pretty level. So if you take this pawn takes c3, you get the open b file. Maybe you'll play pawn c4 to keep opening the position. And if you look at who is the better development, it's obviously white, who is castled and has 3 minor pieces out. And his rook quickly comes to b1. That'll bring another piece into the game. So Grandmaster Ilyushin says, I'm going to play h6, knight to b3. Like, come on, take on c3. Finally, at long last, the pawn was captured on c3. But, Dina, we could see like just continued quick play by white. This bishop could come out to e3 with tempo. What do you make of this? Is it
it's definitely a line that white knows quite well, and we can see that the pawn sacrifice is very much justified. You can see the very big advantage in the development. You can see the white king already castled, the rook that comes on b1, so the queen on b6 will be absolutely ridiculous. It makes a lot of sense to me. This knight on e7, you don't really know where it goes. It cannot go neither to f5 nor to g6 because you will take it with the bishop. And yes, how would you develop the f8 bishop? Perhaps you would have to go something like g6 or g5, trying to attack on the king side, but at the same time, where would you put your king if you're black here? You wouldn't go to the long castle because of the open b file. It's quite complex, and we don't really see the easy plan of development for black here.
Oh, it looks pretty scary. I like this pawn sacrifice. It's the Milner-Berry Gambit, and I hear this in Simon Williams' voice because I've actually watched his lesson videos on chess.com where he talks about the French, and those videos are very high quality. But now that I am seeing the name, I'm not good with names of openings, and this pawn sacrifice, it is known to the players, in particular to Bergadzi. He's now up half a minute, and he is down a pawn, but with the initiative, and that's his style. He is definitely a player who likes to be on the attack. And knight f5 was played, big decision time. Do I take on f5, after which e takes f5 hurts the pawn structure for black, but this bishop can maybe park itself on e6. The dark square bishop can finally develop, and castling kingside feels safer when this pawn is on f5, your king's not under attack so much.
I would still root for white here because you would put your knight to d4, trying to attack the f5 pawn and even the king. It would look safer there for black king, but still, for me, the initiative would be definitely on the white side.
Yes, it's just a big decision, right? To give up your bishop that could be very powerful. Maybe you'll see a move like g4 played, kicking that knight right back to e7. That's not out of the question to say just go back. Your bishop's not getting out, but at any time you play g4, your king can become weaker. So let's keep on going within these games here. We have Ryosuke Nanjo, international master from Japan. This is the matchup between Morgan Stanley Hungary and Rossetti Volga. Look at this position. I just saw it at the corner of my eye. I saw pawn on f4, Dina. This looks kind of scary for white at first glance, but then I noticed, wait, this d5 pawn is pinned, so can you get away with taking this e4 pawn? What do you make of this wild position?
Let us see if the e3 pawn is not under attack as well. Like if there's knight e4 followed by f takes e3, f takes e3. Okay, you take with this knight, makes sense. Well,
this
I guess it's all about
problems.
the king's safety.
Yeah, I think the king here is much safer. You can just even go king h8 to force that knight to move. And I don't know, it's one of these situations where you can be greedy and take this pawn e4, but perhaps you're better off not doing so. I just like the look of black's position. You're all out aggressive. And where is white's king going to go? It's probably going to have to go to the queen side, but you push these pawns up in a4 and b4. So if black gets a b6 type of move, perhaps that will open that side as well. But
and now that I think about it, it might even be quite of a suicide because you actually open the e file and you have your king on this file. So even if the e3 pawn would be your pawn up, it's a backward pawn. There is the e4 square, yes. So it's definitely worth sacrificing.
That's right. I think that this is scary for white, especially in this time control where black now has an extra minute and a half on the clock. The king is in the center. I see what the evaluation says, but the move like f3, even though it stabilizes the position, the rook is closed down. I feel like black has these really long-term chances as white's king maybe actually now will go to the king side. Now that I think about it, wait a second. It's funny. I thought the king would never go in that direction, but perhaps the next move for white, if say this knight goes back to f6, is just to try to castle king side. Weird position.
Yeah, it definitely seems more solid here for the white's king. How about knight f2, trying to insist on opening the position?
I think it's a reasonable plan because even if right now you see it's only 0.5, 0.6, that means that it's one extra pawn, but it's not really a full extra pawn. It's because this king is still a bit out in the open. Black can continue with the initiative here. So I think knight f2 is a very reasonable choice if you want to go for the attack. And it seems that knight f6 was played because not our material. Dina, I say this all the time. When it's not my material, I'm always willing to sacrifice it. But during a game, I would probably also play knight f6 just out of a little bit of concern. And then I look at the evaluation and says, nope, actually that move wasn't so great because now white is plus over 1. So it's just a nice position for white, although knight g3 seems to be a bit inaccurate. Still, I'm starting to appreciate white's position more and more.
Yeah, but you know what? It's still kind of okay. It's in the middle of a rapid and a blitz format, so it's usually good to play a little bit too active here, trying to.
Oh, too active though, right?
Oh yes.
I was listening to you. I was like agreeing with you, and then I was like, oh wait, I see the eval bar jump up. There must be something, and knight takes d5 just wins this knight on h5 tactically. Sorry, Dina, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Will she find it?
I think so. I feel like this is a tactic. Yep, she played it.
Nice.
Big turn of events here in this matchup, and bishop e6 played. What?
It's not over yet. Their knight is pinned.
So if I take, queen takes, and then can I just steal this pawn e3? Just say I stole 2 of your pawns.
Oh, wow.
How you can deal with it? Bishop c4 is also possible here, going for some tactics, and that's what she played. She's confident right now. She's just taking charge of the position.
Yeah, that's a little bit too active for black.
Yeah, and it's so easy to miss this knight takes d5 because that pawn was protected by another pawn, and we always say pawn's best friend's another pawn. But that tactic was available. The king was open. Dina, you were saying that the king didn't feel quite that safe for black, and that was a pawn drop and a big turn of events here in this match. So we'll see if International Master Rusuke Nanjo will be able to fight back. But let's keep on going. We have so many good games to look at. Here's one: Grandmaster Korbov taking on Grandmaster Tuan Berg, and this position isn't Black up a pawn. I mean, where's the compensation?
That's a good question.
It looks like an extra pawn and same material except for the pawn. I mean, same color bishops, both sides of a knight. Is White just trying to claim that I'm castled, I'm more developed, so that's enough?
Perhaps to try to bring the F pawn to make it look scary at least.
Seems like you'd have to move the queen somewhere and then move the pawn. It feels a bit slow, right?
Yeah, it's definitely too slow. But it seems like it's the only thing that White could try here to do.
Yes. And wait a second. Wait a second. Was that I'm almost okay, that's a normal move, but at first I saw the move c5 on move 4 without looking through the moves. Like, wait, c5, could that be a mouse slip? But this is a variation. But oftentimes White, takes this pawn rather than go c5. So Corbo is a very experienced player, and it seems that Tuan Berg just found a nice tactical sequence in the opening to win first the e5 pawn and then the c5 pawn. So those pawns, when they go too far, if you can break the chain, then the pawns start dropping. So I think that Black is just happy.
Indeed.
And yes, so all right, 97 played. We'll see how this one continues. There's just so many games going on. I want to go to Dimitri Yacovenko against Georg Meyer. That's a big time matchup between two superstars in chess. And the last one played was c5. Dina, only one piece has been traded. Black took on f3 with the bishop. That was a knight there. So what do you make of this position right now?
Okay, the queen on b4 looks a little bit misplaced. I think Black should definitely try to put it back like on a5 in order to escape back to c7 soon. Otherwise, it might be in trouble. There's definitely nothing more concrete for now, but it looks like it's not the place where you want to keep your queen.
Yeah, that queen could be in real danger. There also are tactics, right? With like a knight takes d5, you're not careful here, the knight can recapture. But just to show that, like, let's say,
Well,
oh, sorry,
if
go ahead.
if we were trying to make it work, a3, like okay, now there's the b3 pawn, but if
But if
a3 and queen a5, then it would actually work.
great call. Queen a5 walks into knight takes d5, exposing attack on the queen. The queen takes, but then White throws in the intermezzo. Knight takes f6 check. Once Black recaptures, White takes the queen, and that wins a pawn. So you're right that this queen is in trouble. It might be trapped. But Georg says, no, it's not. I'm going to play e5. I'm going to break your pawn chain. And the reason why e5 is so strong for Black is a pawn chain. This is connect 4. You win the game, right? But the problem with this is if I can start breaking down your pawn chain and you take back with your pawn, now the d4 pawn is a target that I can try to gang up on. So the pawn chain is very safe when the base pawn is f2, but a pawn chain is only as strong as the base pawn. So f2 is strong, d4 is not quite as stable.
Yeah, in that case, the queen would become a force, not a weakness. But here, I think Georg is being pretty creative here, putting his queen on b4. I guess a human being wouldn't do that so easily.
Right. Oh gosh, Yacovenko, he's up a minute on the clock. It's a big matchup between Gronke and Yandex, and Rook B1 play. What a curious move. And I mean, I think some kind of A3.
This is my idea.
Yeah. So, and E4 doesn't work, right? E4, knight takes E4. The knight protects the queen. So
here we go, finally.
Right, another fancy, temporary, looks like a sacrifice, but in fact it just steals a pawn. So, wow, E4 also leaves the pawn chain intact, so that's probably not what Black wants to do regardless. But Queen A5 now makes sense because knight takes D5. Hey, it's the same tactic, right? Guess what? Your queen's not defended because that rook went to B1. And that's what happens at these high-level games. These small little moves change the dynamic completely. And Georg went E5 and then saw the opportunity to drop the queen back. Maybe that queen will go to C7, as you mentioned, Dina. I like Black's chances here.
Yeah, absolutely. You could try a sneaky little B4, hoping that the Black would take, and then you would go for bishop A1 and rook takes B7, but I guess there will be just queen C7.
Right.
So wouldn't gain much.
Well, I mean, still the plan that
it's the plan. It's the plan indeed.
They
Oh,
drew.
what?
They drew.
Why?
Oh no. Oh no.
Oh, this is so frustrating. Why
Oh
did they do
gosh.
that?
Yeah,
Why
so
would they do that?
I have very strong opinions about draw offers. And well,
Oh,
for Yacovenko, I'm guessing at this point he probably wasn't thrilled with the position that's pretty closed. But in a team event, you look at your other boards and you have to weigh, hey, it's not just about me. Maybe I want to win my game, but let's see how the rest of the boards are doing. So I'm going to try to find those boards actually. Here, Alina Kashlinskaya is board 2 for Gronke, and she has the white pieces. Well, from Georg Meyer's perspective, that and just looking at this board, white seems to be in good shape. So he said, okay, I'll make a draw with black against Super Grandmaster. And now, Alina, you're higher rated. You have a nice position because of the advanced pieces here. Everything doing a good job for white. But how do you actually break through? How do you win this game, Dina?
well, it's not so easy to be honest. And Alina is known to be a very sharp and tactical player. Here, the position seems more solid. So that's gonna be pretty interesting for us to see how she will try to outplay her opponent.
I like the start though. Bishop f2 is a sneaky move because you're like, wait, what are you doing? You're going to play h4. I also can play knight e3.
93 to bring the knight to f5.
And this could be a case of, at first, like, what is this knight on d3 doing? The pawn e5 is well protected. So maybe this knight comes to f5, and then this knight comes to c4, a4. So you kind of just switch places with your pieces. And the knight on f5 is so powerful because the king has to go away. Maybe you'll get a knight to the d6 square. So essentially, what I'm trying to say is this knight will come to c4 to replace. The other knight will come to f5. So it'll look something like this. Knight
Yeah,
d3
would be a dream position.
to
But you
f5.
know what? Thinking about the previous result we saw, it made me think Yakovenko is definitely a world class grandmaster, but we shouldn't forget that he hasn't been active for years now, and I would actually put on Georg Meyer more than on him. So for me, that draw result was a little bit too early.
Yeah, it definitely caught us off guard. And for those of you watching, I can see you in the chat. So we're as surprised as you are. And for those of you who are here, please, just a quick reminder for everyone that FIDE has an ongoing charity event. Type the command donate in chat for more information how to donate. Donations will show up on screen. It's very greatly appreciated for some super important initiatives, including players with disabilities, veterans of chess, and chess and education. So thank you so much for the continued support as we continue analyzing these games. So the pawn structure has changed completely. It looks like Alina still has an advantage, but this knight can come to e5. At some point, maybe some trades, the king can come to e6. We will come back to this game just because so much is happening. I feel like we can't stay on any one game for too long. We're following all the top matches from the various groups. We have Jan Nepomniachtchi's game. Looks like he is just winning at this point. He's also playing somebody, I don't think 1898 is the accurate rating for the opponent, but clearly Jan, the much higher rated of the two. And Dina, 2 extra pawns. Is my math right?
Yes, absolutely, you're right. 2 pawns up for Jan, and seems to be pretty much winning. But okay, it's still about converting.
Yes, and I'm being told the rating for white is 25-27. So 1898, not very accurate representation of the player's strength. And yet Jan is that good, where he makes grandmasters, 2,500 plus players, and says, I'm up 2 pawns to black, and now I can go and win this game. So this knight on a3 does defend b5. This knight on e5 can actually go to g4 if you're not careful, hitting the bishop and the pawn. This seems like it'll be a straightforward win for Jan. Maybe I don't see the way forward. I trust Jan to do it for his team. So let's
You'll definitely find a way with this bishop on g7 being there, a serial killer on the pawn c3.
Too good. That bishop's too good. I just saw another game, this one here between Hannemarie Kleck. This is in Grenke against Yandex. She is up a bishop. White has these 2 pawns, and I see the eval bar saying huge advantage for black. And I agree with that because the pawns can't quite coordinate. Or this pawn would love to get to a6, not happening yet. But Dina, I could see a future where white does not lose this game. And these pawns can be very scary if black's not careful.
Yeah, once the second pawn comes to a6, they will be stronger than the rook, as we all know. And to connect past pawns. So I guess there is a lot of counterplay here.
Right. And just reminded everybody that we saw a draw on the top board. So it's with even half-half to this point. And this would be a really big victory for Gronke if Hannemarie Kleck is able to take this one. And her position looks great. She's doing well here. So let's see If we can keep going, I mean, just every match is important at this stage, and a5 was played there. Looks like we have a game. Whoa, this is a strange position where like black's pieces aren't developed, and for
And the rook not being the perfect blockader at all, but here we go, rook on d5 in front of the isolated pawn.
mm-hmm, it's isolated pawn, rook good, bishop pair, but that bishop on f8 not out. The rook on h8 caught in the corner. So this game's still very unclear as to the directions.
I'm pretty much surprised why this is still considered to be an equal position. Looking at that bishop and the rook, it brings me some pain.
Yes, and this is a Morgan Stanley Hungary versus Rossetti Volga. So this is a very important match, the top of their group right now, and it's Morgan Stanley Hungary. You see the Hungarian flag for Peter Lizak here. So G5, I like that move. Feel like it just takes up space, and I guess Black isn't in any hurry to get the kingside pieces out, but you can even consider putting your rook on G8 at some moment if you can get these pawns going up the board.
I guess it's more about activating the bishop on the first place and also taking the space with the g4, probably getting rid of the knight.
Right, this knight would have to go back, and then Black saying, all right, I'm going to keep making progress here. Rook c7, clear attack on this pawn on b7, and this is the pool C top match. I think rook d7 is a great move. If you take, the king can just replace the rook, and the bishop pair, that's what's trying to make its mark. So I like Black's position in this game. Got to keep bopping around if that's okay with you, Dina. Just so many interesting games catching my attention, including this one here, where what's happening? I can't calculate quickly enough. Like this
Who
king
is
on
under
G7.
attack?
If that king were a rook, I think that this would be pretty devastating. But that's a king in the path. So this is
and this e6 pawn seems to be so strong, but yet we don't know yet how to use it.
Right. So this position looks good, and now the queen can go take on h3. This king is in the way, so it'll probably slide back to h8, and Black only 53 seconds. So we're going to keep on going here. I mean,
I'm totally confused here with white advantage when you see that it's Black who is attacking.
I think it's because of this pawn e6. I'm guessing the long term favors white, even if the short term looks scary. And I see that we were looking at this game earlier between Ryusuke and Anjo. He has the advantage. Remember, he was the one who blundered this knight takes d5 shot.
That's true, on d5.
And look at this king walking in here. Like, this king is going to help win.
He's making the mating attack.
Yes, this king is helping out. This rook on b7. This is board 4 for Morgan Stanley Hungary and Rossetti Volga. So this is in pool C, the top match. This king is entering. I think there's nothing that white can do. How did this turn around? We'll probably check in the break between round 5 and round 6, but what a turnaround, Dina. This is not what you want to see if you're from Team Rossetti Volga.
And this is absolutely what you want to see when you're commentating.
Right? You would like to see the king all advanced and coming into f3, helping in the attack. Is the move rook to e1, but none of white's pieces can move after that. And rook, oh, you can even push e2. Oh, wait, that's free bishop. I didn't realize the bishop was hanging. That's even better.
Oh, nice.
Oh, this is just not good at all. E2, knight e3, rook f1, checkmate. That's the plan from here. This looks pretty over with, honestly.
Yeah, as I told you, the king will participate in the attack.
Mm-hmm. And there's nothing that white can do, unfortunately. First, she's stuck. Let's go on over quickly to this game out of the corner of my eye here. It's an end game where Black is down a bishop for 3 pawns, or you could say up 3 pawns for a bishop. And white is trying to win this. This is an Optiver matchup. They're not in first place, but they're near the top. They need this victory. Anish Giri and co. trying to win their group, but it looks like white is the one with the advantage.
That's a very interesting endgame. If you want to fight for the draw here, you just need to exchange the last a4 pawn.
Mm-hmm. But it seems like white can try to play for a win. I say very skeptically. Oh, whoa. That's a big decision, trading off the dark squared bishops.
Yeah. Okay, white still has a hope because the a8 square is of the right color.
Nice.
But it seems like There is no way you could take the b6 pawn without getting yourself in trouble with a queen promoting from the black side.
Oh, e4 check, e4 check. Oh, e4 because the bishop took you at c2 and e4 again. Oh gosh, no time for the players, but e4 cuts that bishop off. You have to. There it
e4,
is.
yes, he made it. He made it. That's what I told you. You didn't have any time to go for this b6 pawn.
No, you were absolutely correct. And now there's a queen on the board, and this is a win for international master David Pardo-Simon. And queen b1 check. Okay, you can just stop this pawn. Should not be too difficult for him to figure out. And then this e pawn will also start moving.
Absolutely.
So okay, you gotta be careful. A7. That's getting real
and there
close.
Was the check on
check
g3,
bishop c6.
g6.
Oh, then you could even at some point think about taking it. Like it's very close.
That would be
but
no,
you're
it
too
doesn't
slow.
work here. It doesn't work.
But look at this.
Oh,
That's
this
smart.
one is nice.
Sacrificing the queen for the pawn, and then the new one queens.
Yeah, and you go to the white square, and he cannot stop you.
Oh gosh, if that pawn were one step up the board.
And here, I guess queen a8 would be nice. Queen a8 would be a beautiful one.
Mm-hmm. So I think the queen is just going to snake around somehow, just try to get closer and closer. And actually, if the queen...
And then we'll be checkmating too. You will play king d6, queen b6, and queen c7 will be a checkmate.
Yeah, actually, king d6 earlier was good.
King d6 now, come on, and the checkmate.
Well, now, if the king was b8, now go king d6. Here, king d6, your plan. There it is.
And the checkmate,
d7
the
checkmate.
typical one. Nice.
It's always funny when you get in there, wins on time, but you give your opponent a queen, and yet you just go deliver a checkmate. Like, that's a standard idea. And if we go back in time to when e4 was available for several moves, and I'll try to see if there are any other games to look at, but just at this point here, the bishop needs to stay preventing the pawn. And the great thing about bishops is they're long range pieces, so they can keep an eye on the diagonal. So king takes c3 was necessary because now if e4, king d4, and it's white who's going to win the game because I'm going to take this pawn and then I'm going to stop your other pawn. And e3, king d3, I just move my bishop a bunch of times and then I'm going to win your pawn because your king has to let go. So
amazing. So there was actually a way to make it work for white.
That was if black pushed e4. It seems at this point e4 is not the right move. It's a king e3 to be so precise, shouldering the enemy king out so that you can play e4 next is in the game. But now the bishop has to stay on this side because that way you cover the g2 square. So it's was a close call here, and I'm being told that Optiver was third in the pool. It's very close to the top. So a win for them on this board that can be very instrumental in their comeback as they try to take their group. But it might be a little too late. But either way, there's a big win for them and a very instructive end game. So I'm just going to click on the few games to see remaining. This one here, that's Morgan Stanley Hungary and Rossetti Volga. We were looking earlier. Dina, we traded the rooks off. Still even material, still an isolated pawn, bishop pair. How big are black's winning chances?
Well, from what I can see, the isolated pawn is not that weakness anymore because there are no heavy pieces on the board anymore. So that's a good thing for white.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to be quite closed, even though you know that it's an open position. But I feel comfortable here with this knight.
Yeah, it's true because also like this bishop on d5 looks very powerful, but it's not attacking anything. And the dark squares, look at this. What are you going to attack on this pawn chain? So you're like, wait, how does black make progress? Why is the advantage minus 1.4 almost? That seems exaggerated based on what we're looking at. But let's talk about how we make progress. First of all, do we take? Because if we take and we play f5 check and you go king e5, your king says, oh, I'm coming in. And I say, no, you're not. And then my king starts walking up the board. Like very
Isn't
quickly.
it? Yeah, it's at least perpetual here.
Yeah, you can just go back and forth. That's actually really funny. So it's a situation where you push back and then you're going to come up the board.
Yeah, I'm actually looking for a mating net, something like king e7 threatening bishop. Yeah, well, maybe white can get out of it. But
it's
okay,
close.
In any case, it's not that you don't feel any win here for black.
Yeah, there's no necessarily win on the spot, but I feel like getting the king to d5 would be good. So the problem with it is you give up your bishop for the knight, and he actually goes for it, but he's going to bring his king up, and he's playing this exact line. He wants to blockade the pawn with the king. That pawn's on a dark square, and I could see a Zugzwang in the future, Dina, where if we just go forward a couple moves here, just to put a position on the board, let's say bishop
That's
back,
true.
king
That's true.
d5.
There is this kind of a Zuxan, but you know what? They say one weakness is not enough to win. So if I keep my bishop on b2, c3, a1,
Hmm.
how would you improve? Still, okay, you attack my d4 pawn. I agree, it's a big weakness, but where's the second one? I mean, it could be f2 or h2. They are blocked on the dark squares, but there is no way to attack them.
But see, that's because you have studied a lot of chess. You're a strong player. You know, maybe my bishop needs to change diagonals. Whereas I think a lot of people would keep the bishop here as it's protecting everything. The problem with this is black is just going to make these moves, and either you move your bishop and lose your pawn on d4, or you move your king, and then this king starts running into the position potentially over here. So, yeah, I think that you're right that white can try to defend in that manner, but it's not going to be a fun defense. And king c6 played, king coming to d5, king c4. There's b5 check the king off. That black king is very active, and I feel like I'm watching a Capablanca game, and he was so good at winning positions like this, converting into an end game where black has the active pieces, has the initiative, but winning this is a different story. So hey, your advice is followed.
Yeah, and here's the question. I've been thinking of something like bishop b4, bishop e1, but there would always be king e2. So yet here we go again.
Right.
How to create the second weakness?
I like that move, and at some point you can play moves like h4 and f4, but that
Yeah, that
you
would
don't.
be a nice idea.
Okay,
To
I got
exchange
you.
on the pawns on g3.
Put your pawn on h3. That feels like a potentially good strategy.
Okay, and then what? Sacrificing?
Then play bishop d6 at some moment and try to like break open this side of the
f4.
board.
Yeah, but I would take that one. You see, I have enough pawns there.
I'm trying to make it work and it's difficult.
I definitely do not see, at least not immediately.
Yeah, and the advantage is big for black, but it could be a potential fortress if white's able to fend this off. So at some point, black is going to need to find a way to like give the turn to white when a zugzwang where white has to move, and it's no matter what the move is, it's bad. So bishop c1 is played, giving yourself the flexibility of starting either way. I like h4, h3, okay,
He'll listen to you.
and now it says that black is just crushing. So where is the end of this game? F4 is coming. No, F4. Yeah, not yet. Not yet.
Okay, f4 is coming. What's next? The question is, what's next?
I got you.
You
Bishop.
got f4, you exchange, and then you sack on g3.
I'm going to change my plan.
Oh.
Bishop d8, bishop b6, and e5, and then I'm going to go for your pawn.
Oh, nice. Oh,
Right.
wow.
I think
Very
that
nice
is
one.
the plan that you need to execute, and there's plenty of time for black. And f4, yeah, that move looks pretty good, but maybe you're trading off too much, and then your g4 pawn is potentially a target later in the game. So I think that bishop d8, you can't stop me from getting to b6, and then I don't know how
Nice.
you stop me from playing e5. Oh, the engine didn't like that move.
He doesn't see it yet. He tries to make something in order to improve his position.
Yes, and I would play bishop a5 because I keep talking about this bishop d8, bishop b6. Maybe I put my bishop on the most active way to defend the pawn.
But then we could have a way to play still f4 and sacrifice on g3, like bring the bishop to d6, play f4, take on g3 twice, and your pawn pass to the queen.
Right, and bishop a5 played. Oh gosh, the f4 ideas are definitely for choice here, and I'm informed that Morgan Stanley has already won this match. Morgan Stanley Hungary, they're up 2.5. But remember that board points are the thing to keep an eye on. So every single point matters. If they can win this game rather than draw, that might even lock up the group for them. So bishop e7 played.
Here we have bishop c7 protecting the diagonal. Bishop c7 would have
Oof.
been the
Okay.
right move. I'm pretty sure it would have
Yep.
stopped from all the ideas of
This is winning
black.
now. Your idea. You
Yeah,
were saying it,
yeah,
Dina. This is
goes.
all you, because you're going to sack a bishop here, and because this pawn's on h3, that pawn's going to go promote. This is
Yeah,
just
now
completely
it's
winning.
a quick death.
But it's very difficult because, when you're defending this position, right, you're defending against the attack on the d4 pawn. You're defending against f4. You're trying to defend against maybe bishop coming this way. Like all of these different options are there. So you have to be precise, like extremely precise for white just to survive. And you put your bishop on b6. And then as this bishop came here, f4, you can even take. This is just
Yes,
winning.
as I told you, it's a principle of the second weakness. Here we got even the third one. But I'm still sure that if he had played bishop c7, that might have been holdable still.
Right. No
Just on the
fun.
bishop e7, bishop c7 to protect the diagonal.
I agree. No fun, but probably just on the verge of holding here. And if you take the bishop now, black will not take back. Black will push to
G2.
g2 and queen here.
Exactly.
This looks just winning. Pawn takes g3, bishop takes g3. And this is thematic because of how advanced black's pawns were. That's why black had this big advantage the whole time, was you had the advanced pawns, and even though it was equal in terms of material, it was not equal in terms of the quality of the pawns, and black is creating a queen.
This h3 pawn is also known to be as a backup passed pawn. It's not a real passed pawn, but it's soon to be a passed pawn for an endgame. And it's in any position, it's useful to bring your A and H pawns until the maximum to advance them, because one day in the endgame, they can serve you.
And that's exactly why we saw International Master Lazek play h5, h4, h3. Just push that pawn up the board and use that to your advantage of strength. And Dina, we probably will look at it in a little more detail, but perhaps you were right that around here, that bishop on c7. Oh, not here because the pawn was under attack.
Yeah, bishop D, bishop b6, bishop e7, and here bishop c7. And I don't see the exact way to break through here.
Yeah, you know what I would do, especially because there's not that much time left. I would like move my bishop around a bunch of times and just try to see if I can catch you off
You would
guard.
try to confuse me. Yeah.
Wow. Well, we have the results in the books for the top boards. Let's show everybody what happened here. Look at Spare going 4-0, led by Jan Nepomniachtchi. They won every single game of their match. It looks like they're going to make it through Group A. Granke Bank, thanks to Alina Kashlinskaya, we started looking at her game. We liked her position, but she ended up winning that. And then Hanna Marie Kleck, we saw her position up a bishop for a pawn. She won as well. So Granke Bank now in the lead in Group B.
And this what I told you, yeah, this Dmitri Yacovenko definitely should not have accepted that draw. He should have continued to fight.
Yes, you were saying that. We were shocked when that happened. So that half point could make all the difference. But remember, the first tiebreak is, or sorry, how they get through is on board points. So they still have a chance, even though they lost the match. Rossetti Volga, they had a tough round. They lost 3.5 to this very powerful team from Morgan Stanley, Hungary. We just watched a win on board 2 by Peter Lysak with the black pieces in that endgame. Over there, Sparebank Trade Union. I see some familiar names here. Sparebank Trade Union, SBER. There's something powerful in the name there because the trade union wins 3.5, led by Anton Korba. We didn't like his position when we first tuned in, but we lost sight of that game, and somehow he ended up winning the game. So a big win for them. And then CSOB, the Czech bank, they lost to ERG there. And look at that, 3.5. So even though these were the top matchups, somehow one-sided affairs. And finally, the State Bank of Mongolia playing against European Patent Office, it looks like. And that was a tie 2-2. So some of the top players in Mongolia trying to lead their team. And it's the European Patent Office, The Hague. So, oh gosh, well, it's a long name. It's been...
That's been the round 5, and we still have one more round to go in order to get the names of the people of the teams who qualify for tomorrow.
Exactly. And you know what's cool about this, Dina, is that, of course, everybody knows certain companies, the names of them, and we see companies that maybe are lesser known, but still have all this hidden chess talent, many treasures out there. And while this tournament is not just about the chess, we, of course, are having a great time covering the games, but this is also to raise awareness and raise money for these great causes. Chess for people with disabilities, FIDE Chess Veteran Support Program, Chess in Education. So please do. Please get involved. If you can donate, there is a command in the chat. There is a panel to click that you can go right there. So we appreciate all the support given for very worthy causes. And Dina, round 5 is in the books. We have one final round remaining of the group stage. We'll be locked in. I think I want to give more attention to the Mongolian team. We haven't really caught up with their games. Just so much action happening at the same time. But I'm very curious. I think that would be a big achievement and a big deal because Mongolians really do love chess. And I think that they've been a force for a number of years, maybe lesser known to the broader public. But Dina, as a very serious chess player yourself, we've seen the rise of many Mongolian talents.
Indeed, absolutely. And as we said previously, this tournament is the first edition, and we hope to see all those new names to the chess world to be future legends of chess.
For sure. I mean, just so many names here that you never know, or there could be somebody who is playing and they take chess seriously after this, or just people who haven't played for a long time and they're just getting back into it, having a good time with coworkers. And I think a lot of people love chess. They sometimes have to put it aside because of other things in their life. But I really am happy to see how many players are taking part in this, how many different companies from all over the globe, all different types of companies. So it's been great. And Dina, I'm having fun, but it is time for a break. We'll be back in about 15 minutes. And when we return, we'll go over some of the action and we'll get ready for the sixth and final round of the group stage. we return. We are going to analyze some games from the fifth round of the FIDE World Corporate Chess Championship. Dina, we've seen many good games in that last round, some even matchups, and sometimes some scores that were pretty lopsided with a 4-0 performance, for example, from Jan Nepomniachtchi's spare team.
We also seen some lessons for our viewers. Hopefully, that was pretty instructive.
Certainly, we had some great positions to look out for, and we pulled some positions for you also. We can analyze some specific chess moments and not just talk broadly about the matches. So, for example, there was this game here where White's position is already looking a little bit like a struggle. It's Black's turn. The position, the bishop on g7 is looking down at the White king. The queen on c7 is also operating well. The rook on d6 on an open file. The knight on e4. I think get the point. All of Black's pieces are looking like they're in prime position, and Black moved the rook to d5. Nice move defending the pawn. Needed defense was under attack twice. Knight to d2. And we saw some trades here, Dina. And this is an interesting moment because after rook c5, we can see the evaluation bar is so heavily in Black's favor. But in the game, bishop takes b7 was played, and Black quickly took back on b7. And you see the evaluation bar changed completely. So how do we work on our mindset? So instead of automatically recapturing, even in a blitz game, how do we work on it so that instead of doing that, we find a way to take on c2?
We actually need to always check all the candidates, all the captures, checks, and attacks.
Yeah, I think that's a start. And I think it's easy, though, to overlook that this bishop is helping you out because rook takes c2 by itself, that wouldn't be good enough, but it's because this bishop on g7 is so powerful. And I just think it's easy kind of to like forget about it for a second because when somebody captures in front of your king, you're like, okay, I gotta take that back. But it was available. Rook takes c2.
It would also be an in-between move, and those kind of moves are pretty easy to miss.
That's right. And in fact, because Black missed this, if we go forward in this game, White not only survived, but as we continue here, White started getting the initiative with c4. Takes. It still looks a bit dangerous for this White king, but it's starting to look dangerous for this Black king as well. And you just saw the engine. It was saying, okay, Black is better. Now it's back at a 50-50 scenario. And the game continued with White stealing a pawn on the other side of the board, right? It's like, wait, we're looking at the king on b1, the king on a7. And then White says, okay, let me take that pawn because f7 is under attack next. And look at this, where White goes queen e3, rook to d1. All of White's pieces are now operating in unison. So, Dina, these games turn around so quickly, don't they?
Absolutely, they do. And this is what makes them even more exciting to watch.
It really do. And look at h4, the c3 pawn's protected. White said, okay, I stole your pawn, and look at it go. It kept going pretty far, and now the queen tried to take care of the pawn, but that's neglecting the king safety, and queen came to d3, into d6 with check, and you see that eval bar skyrocket because pawns are being lost, checkmates are on the radar here, and after king c8, you'll notice the knight takes away the escape square, so landing a check. That wasn't the right way to go necessarily, but finally to e8, and there's nothing you can do except drop the bishop back, and that's checkmate.
Here we go. One would never believe into that pawn, but it made its way through.
And can you believe that, though? We go back to that position where bishop took on b7. It really seemed like Black before that point, and we have the evaluation bar. But even without the evaluation bar, it looks so strong for Black, and White was able to defend and then turn that defense into offense. Just crazy turnaround.
Absolutely.
So I have a couple more games to pull up here. We have the Morgan Stanley Hungary team. They won their match, and it's thanks in no small part to Petra Pap, a very strong player. This position, the bishop on c5, protected by this queen on f8, it's a bit awkward for Black. And Dina, it was really quick how White turned this position from a pleasant-looking one into an attack. So queen c2, direct attack, also eyeing the h7 pawn. Bishop needs to move. Knight g5, hitting h7, hitting the bishop on e6. g6, only way to stop the checkmate. Rook e5. I mean, that move is excellent. That's such a difficult move to play, I feel like, because of how many good moves White seems to have. But rook e5, that's class.
You bring your rook to the center. It at the same time it may attack and also participate in the in the center, in the other wing, it's definitely a very tricky move. And you, at first glance, you do not really understand what this rook is doing there. But then when you look deeper, you kind of understand the whole the whole meaning of this.
I think one of the main ideas is that if black had a free move, bishop d7 is a way to trade rooks, a way to try to take this knight out from c6, because this knight on c6 is taking away the rook squares for that rook on a8. So black can hardly move. So rook e5 is one of these fantastic moves. It's not a sacrifice. It doesn't threaten anything in particular, but it restricts black even more. And wrote in here went queen d6, which looks normal, but look at the bar because Petrapap had a tactic up her sleeve, knight to e4. Give me this dark square. And after queen to f8, well, I don't mind if I do. I take here, and f5 was played because after bishop takes, knight f6 check. That's a check here. This bishop is hanging. There's going to be dark square problems as well. A really nice way to win this game for Petrapap.
So in the end of the day, that was that kind of a slow move that had a very big idea behind.
That's right, and it can be difficult to play a move like rook e5, but it just stops all of black's possible ideas and it wins the game. And we had some other interesting games just to look at here. I mean, this final position, board one, between Grandmaster Bachulan and Tea Lanchava. But this game, while the end is particularly clear, look at the pieces slicing through. If we go back in time, just around here, it's where I wanted to start. This is a normal theoretical position out of the English. And neither side can complain too much. The bishop on g2 is staring on the long diagonal, but black has pieces and a center that's quite compact, very solid. And I wanted to show this position, Dina, because I think what white did makes a lot of sense, very natural. And at this point, knight to e4 is a normal move, but you can already see the evaluation bar going in black's favor. So the reason why is now that there's a pawn on d4, black wants to use the c3 square for himself. How does that look? The knight wants to replace white's knight here. And so knight a4, believe it or not, that's the move you have to play so that your knight can't get kicked from the defense of the square. It's a very hard move to play because knight e4 does look thematic. It looks standard. But after knight e4, f5, knight goes back, knight d5, and after bishop b2, doesn't help because I put my knight in here, and now I have a passed pawn. This pawn a3 is under attack. So, Dina, what can you say about situations where you're making moves in the center, normal-looking moves? How do you determine when to put the knight on the rim versus playing in the center like she did?
Yeah, so first of all, what's interesting here is that usually this knight, as far as I'm concerned, doesn't go to c3 in the theory of the English line, it goes to d2. So here we go. That's why after knight d4 for black, which is a very typical move in this situation, the knight on c3 is getting directly attacked. So it took us 3 moves, if I count correctly, to get to d2 instead of 1. This might be a reason for the trouble for white. And as for your question, I guess in that situation, it was already quite desperate and you needed to come up with something and not so easy to find the right approach when you're already having a slight, let's call it practical trouble.
Yes, it seems so strange because it's move 13. Nothing has really happened. Yeah, we just saw a trade. Okay, great. Doesn't look like white's in any danger. And suddenly you make a move knight e4. We would all rather our piece in the center. A knight on e4 attacks 8 squares. A knight on a4 attacks only 4. So yeah, let's put our knight in the center. We're told to do that. That's how we learn chess. But it just so happens that here it's really about defending the c3 square. So the knight on a4, if we trade knights, you're not getting into c3. You don't have a piece to get there. And after knight d5, well, look at the bar.
What is your knight doing there? And now that I think about it, actually, knight takes d4 for white doesn't seem to me to be a very wise decision. As far as I remember, it might be even knight d2 here for white.
Just that actually is the theoretical move, I believe, to open up the bishop and to not allow this pawn to d4 to cause white some problems. So it's still a theoretical discussion. The player is probably familiar, generally speaking, with the ideas here. But yeah, knight to d4 instead. It's amazing how quickly a position can turn around. Where black is the one getting active. You of course don't want to take that knight and give up your light square bishop and get attacked. And bishop b2 knights either. I think black played an excellent game to just put a knight in a1. Right? That's not a happy piece.
That's a dream for black.
Yeah, and I think it was pretty easy. You take this pawn on a3, and then we saw the final position, but it was just a very one-sided game. So small mistakes, they can also come in pairs, and once that happens, your position can actually collapse way more quickly than you would anticipate. And this was from the match with the Mongolian team,
Yeah, that
and
was a typical example how you should not play chess.
right. And it's funny because just to go back one more time, and I've been saying it's funny. It's really not that funny for the player with the white pieces. But 94, these moves don't seem bad one by one, but in conjunction with one another, that's when it doesn't work. So I think that somehow the coordination wasn't there for white, and black was able to take over. And I do have one more game that I wanted to show because I thought this one was very interesting from Spare's board 3, International Master Lavrov. This is a very complicated position where there's a pawn on d6. That's a passed pawn supported by a queen and a rook. And yet you'll see that the evaluation bar says black is better. But if you make one inaccuracy, that position might not even lose the advantage. You could actually be close to losing if this pawn gets to d7 and say the knight gets to c4, or I can continue to stack my pieces on the d file. It just seems like black could be in big trouble. And that's why International Master Lavrov went c4, a really excellent move, opening the queen up to the pawn f2, trying to say, please move your b pawn and get checkmate. And so I think part of this, Dina, is like a not desperate, but you're clinging on to attacking hopes so you don't just get rolled over. But this move c4, that's a good awareness by black.
Well, it's opposite castles, and the most important rule about playing the opposite castle's position is to be faster than your opponent. It's about the race, and whoever attacks first, he gets it all.
Right. And while the king on g8 is actually pretty safe for now, it's the pawn on d6 that's such a problem. And the game continued here, just a couple moves. D7, rook d8, and rook d2, trying to defend this pawn on f2. And if queen takes c4, several ideas come to mind for black, one of which is rook a5, if I want to bring my rook in to the fifth rank. Also, just queen takes f2, hitting the knight, threatening checkmate over here. And black already is the first of the attack. So queen c3 would be a way to defend both ideas at the same time. But I drew the arrow by accident. I was trying to draw it to b2. a2 not defended, and rook a6, rook c6 looks like a big problem for this king on c1. So it's like a very tricky position. Black is the first one to attack, but this pawn on d7 is still something that white can take pride in. And in the game, after rook d2 is played, c takes b3, now the king was open and you lost your pride and joy, that passed pawn. So once that pawn drops, I think the advantage is very clear for black.
Absolutely.
So those were just some games we wanted to go over from the various groups. We know the standings. We can see that in the final round, we'll know which matchups are important. Spare wins the group with just a draw. They have 18 and a half points. Next has 14 and a half. So a single draw will win them the group. That's pretty clear. In Group B, though, Granke did beat Yandex, but that's only a 1 point spread. So if there is an upset where Granke loses, Yandex or Erste Group or one of the others can come back. But what do you think? Is Granke going to take the group?
They'd better try at least.
Yeah, but what's your mentality? Like you've played in team events before. You're up, so you take it cautiously. You say, all right, maybe we only need to get 2.5 points or 2 points, or you just play like it's the first round and just not focus on the overall standings.
Well, playing a team event is very particular, and it is way more fun when you think about it because you don't have like from one side it's okay you have a pressure, you have a lot of pressure because like your result depends on the team result, but from the other hand your result doesn't matter that much because there are three more players that they are fighting for the same reason. And one more thing about the team event is that you can actually make draw and nothing will happen. The most important thing in when playing the team events is not to lose. So I guess it's all about the team spirit here, and whoever has the higher one, he gets the points.
Yeah, and it just can be tough mentally where you think, oh, let's just play it safe, and sometimes play it safe is actually more risky than playing your typical style. So it looks like Grunke, they're in good shape, but they need to prove it in this final round. Morgan Stanley Hungary is a 1.5 points ahead of Gazprom and 2 points ahead of Optiver. So the Anish Giri-led team is doing very well. They're performing admirably there. They actually have more match points than the team in second place, but board points is what determines the standing. So Gazprom is ahead of Team Optiver, and this final match will be deciding that group. In Group D, Sberbank, we saw Sber in Group A. In Group D, I think we recognize the name Sberbank Trade Union, led by Anton Korbov. They're in first, but this PayPal Bulgaria team, Dina, led by Sergei Ehrenberg and Antonetta Stefanova, very strong team with 2 grandmasters on the board there. So they have a chance to upset this team, but they need to win if they play Sberbank 3-1. That's going to be a tough one to do.
And that's the kind of a match that we want to see in the last decisive match of the day.
Yeah, right. You at least if you could play the team in front of you, you have that chance, right? You want to play that team rather than have them play someone else. You control your own destiny. And in Group E, you see that ERG is ahead. The Czech Bank in second place there, but they just played one another. So will Czech Bank be able to catch up? Will Gordic there in third place be able to knock out ERG and overtake them? It's going to be difficult. 1.5 points is a lot, but sometimes a round goes really wrong. We saw some 3.5, 4-0 performances in the previous round. These things can happen. And finally, in Pool F, we see that the State Bank of Mongolia in first place, but only 1 point ahead of Emphy Solutions. So that one is really close. There are 2 other teams there, the Czech National Bank and RFSO Lokomotiv. You mentioned European clubs. Isn't that a popular Russian club?
Well, surprisingly, I don't see those names here, but I guess what's good about it that we already said, perhaps, is that this first corporative championship can bring us a lot of new names as teams and clubs for the future.
Right. I just maybe I'm mistaken, but I thought Lokomotiv is some in the Russian league.
Yeah, definitely in the football.
Yes. Okay. So maybe I was thinking football and then I mixed up with chess. But
Yeah. Football, and absolutely.
Because I do enjoy football for sure. So that's probably where the mix-up is happening.
That's a very, very big team. Unfortunately,
is.
not yet in chess, but that's what I was telling you about. We shall see soon.
Yeah, no, that would be fantastic. And as we have been saying, these companies often sponsor and are involved with many different leagues, sports, different charities as well. And this event is raising money for the following initiatives: Chess for People with Disabilities, the FIDE Chess Veteran Support Program, and Chess in Education, all very worthy causes. So if you can, please do check out the panel on Twitch. You can use the command donate to get involved, to show your support. It really means a lot to the broader chess community, to so many people around the world. So we're appreciative of that. We are going to take our final break before the final round. So stay tuned, everybody. You will not want to miss round 6 to determine which teams will move on to tomorrow's playoff. And here are the pairings for the final round of the group stage of the FIDE Online World Corporate Chess Championship. You see that Jan Nepomniachtchi taking on Elvira Berend, a very strong player. This matchup between European Investment Bank and Spare, that's going to decide who wins Group A. Group B has Gronke Bank and Erste Group. And I'm curious, Dina, about your opinion in Group C, because Optiver, coming out of nowhere, Anish Giri leads the charge. They need to beat Morgan Stanley because they are currently 2 points behind. So if they win 3-1, they'll need their top 3 boards because on board 4 they're very outrated. Do you think they have a chance to win on boards 1, 2, and 3 and try to take this group from Morgan Stanley?
I think even if the chance is small, they definitely have to give it a try. And yeah, as far as for me, it's hard to root for someone against Anish. So I would really hope for them to win.
It's going to be a really intense matchup there. We have EMCO taking on Sparebank Trade Union. We know Anton Korbov leads the charge for them. ERG against Gordic. ERG in first place by 1.5 board points. And finally, we have the State Bank of Mongolia leading Group F, and they are 1 point ahead of the second place team. RFSO Lokomotiv is in third, 1.5 points back, but it is an open group. No group has been decided. Mainly the Spare team, led by Jan Nepomniachtchi. I think they're up 4 points, so they will probably win their group. But let's go to the games because they're underway. And we're started talking about Anish Giri. We might as well look at the game against Levan Bergadzi, a strong international master. Look at the center, though, right here for White. I know this is an opening that Black can go for, but would this be your choice against Anish Giri?
Definitely not. I would for sure go for someone that could at least promise you to equalize.
Yes. This is just handing the center A6. Okay, I get it. Trying to play for B5 at some point, but White is just developing, taking over the center. This is like a dream come true for Anish. And while we do dive more deeply into the games, I just want to thank everybody who has donated. I see that donation bar there. The number is going up, over $6,000 raised thus far. It's greatly appreciated for these initiatives. And when I see we pull Anish Giri on screen, you know, Dina, he's probably playing his game, but also has the tabs open for his teammates, rooting them on, hoping that the team from Optiver can make that final push and win the group.
Definitely, he's the one who inspires the whole team, and he just does what he has to do.
Yes, and well, developing is what he has to do. Black at some point needs to strike either with B5 or an E5 type of move if you could make that work, because you're lacking space. And you see the EVA bar +1 pretty much for White. Anish plays the calm move A3, trying not to open the position. Bergadzi is an aggressive type of player, so if he can keep the position closed, I mean, look at the center. All 4 minor pieces developed. Black has only 2 minor pieces developed. The queenside pawn structure is compromised. Perhaps Dina will see something with D5, but I think Anish is ready for this.
Yeah, definitely. Black needs to try to bring at least 1 pawn to the center, and we are witnessing this right now.
Okay, and bishop D3 back. Take me on E4. I'll get an isolated queen pawn, but then you will be left with isolated queen side pawns, and those are 2 hard to keep track of. So Anish in a good position. I'm going to keep on going because we do have so many games to look at. This is the matchup between Gronke with Alina Kashlinskaya on board 2, playing with the black pieces. Standard King's Indian. I don't think we need to stay here for very long. It's very early going. We'll try to come back at a good moment, but so far, locked up position. Black at some point will try to strike with F5, and White can even play a move like G4 to stop F5 from happening. So let's keep on going. I don't even know where we should stop because there are too many good options at this point. I'm looking at Anton Korbov's game because of the corner of my eye. I saw King on E8. I saw Pawn F5. Dina, whose attack is going to be stronger?
Oh wow. Again, opposite castles. Well, Black King isn't yet castled, but still. So to be opposite castles, it's all about the race. Whoever is faster wins the game. Here, I can see that White has not only started opening the position of the king, but also is taking the lead in the center.
Mm-hmm. And whoa, Korbov made that move, and look at that. The Eva bar is jumping up for White. So there must be a tactic here. And I wonder, I think I know what it is. Knight D to B5, hitting this queen with the bishop. It feels like there's something there. If Knight D to B5, excuse me, Queen B7 to try to keep the pin alive, maybe there's even Queen takes d6, trying to deliver a checkmate. And if bishop takes, knight takes d6 is a check. That's a fork. At the very least, white stole one pawn, but I think it's going to be much worse than that.
Definitely. The only thing is that they will exchange the queens, and so to be white will not be able to attack anymore. Is that worth it?
I think I would. Taking that material against Korba. Oh, b3. And I really don't like b3 because it's not tactical and you're opening up your king. You may think, all right, I'm putting a pawn in the queen's path. That's a good thing. And of course it is to prevent the mate. But I think that you could have just quickly ripped open the position. And we saw the evaluation bar was justifying this knight to b5 move. We also know the players don't have that luxury. They can't just say, oh, it's +3 if I make this move. They're trying to figure it out on their own. And knight d to b5, while it was available, maybe it's a bit tricky and was miscalculated. So,
and we shall see.
We shall. Pawn takes back. White's king is feeling safer. The black king may not find true shelter. If bishop e7, you can push your pawn to f6, keep ripping the position open. White has a spatial advantage. White has a lead on development and a lead on the clock. So right now, and this matchup between EMCO and Sberbank Trade Union, it looks like Korobov needs to figure it out how to get out of the opening. And I'm just going to really just bop around. So bear with me, Dina and Chad. I know it's going to be hectic. Pulling up the game between David Pardos Simon and Petra Pop. We know that Optiver against Morgan Stanley Hungary. We're still in the Anish Giri matchup, if you will. And what do you make of this, Dina, where Optiver, white pieces in this match, they need some wins here. Do you think they're playing something slow and methodical that we see with this position, or should you try to get aggressive?
I actually think that wherever it's going to be next, white is having a very decent position. It might be equal on the evaluation bar, but I think that it's that kind of position that gives a really slow but little but stable advantage for white. And this might be pretty interesting for them here, trying to improve their pieces little by little. You know, as I enjoy the chance to be rook on d1, pawn on a4, it looks promising for white here to me.
And Petra Pap, very strong player. She's saying, all right, maybe I don't have the clearest plan myself, but neither does white. And this bishop on h7, it's kind of a devilishly strong piece because it hits the pawn e4. And if that pawn goes up to e5, then the c2 pawn could become a quick target. So I think that black's position is actually quite stable, and it's hard for white to find a plan. But then again, white is up quite a bit of time at this stage, and that's what you want to do, is play on the board, but also pressure opponent on the clock.
And you also do not want actually to play e5 because it would ruin your b2 bishop.
Oh,
and here we go, e5.
E5 from black, but that frees up some of these light squares. I'm already thinking, can I go knight h4, knight f5? At some point, can I play, maybe now, knight c4?
Knight c3, knight e4, knight e3, knight e5.
Looking at all the squares here, I feel like white gets new flexibility thanks to this e5 move. Not that it's a blunder, it's not at all, but a move like knight c4 already puts pressure on that pawn, so you give up e4 to win e5, and that's at the very least a fair trade, and white's pieces start to open up. So let's keep our rotation. We're going all around here to see different games, different matches. I'm going to pull up the Magnus Carlsen game because while his team from Kindred is not at the top of the standings, I saw the rating differential, and you get a chance to play Magnus Carlsen. That's really exciting. Of course, I don't imagine that the player with the black pieces is rated 259. That's just their online rating here on chess.com and Rapid Chess, but it's a mismatch on paper. It's a great opportunity to face off against the world champion. So it's once in a lifetime.
Yes, that kind of moments that you really want to enjoy.
Right. And well, the position for black is actually okay for now, where you have a solid positioning of your minor pieces all in the center. The problem, though, is especially when you take on d5, white's plan for an attack is very clear. Because white does not have pieces on the queen side, there's nothing to attack. Like b4 doesn't attack a knight, so it doesn't gain a tempo. a5 may just drop the b5 pawn, but even if you start pushing your pawns up, at a certain point, you have to actually threaten something, and white's plans of h5 and g6 and f4, it just feels much more natural.
Yeah, absolutely looks devastating here.
Yes, so it looks very, very good here for white. Magnus playing his final match here. The team will not move on, but Kindred picked up a pretty good player in Magnus Carlsen. I think we can say he's done all right for the team.
Yeah, there is no doubt for that.
Yes. So 1858 is the player's rating for black. So 259, misleading, but Magnus still has over 1,000 points, or approximately 1,000 points on the opponent. That's pretty wild to think about. So we're going to leave Magnus for now. Well, we'll say goodbye to him in this tournament. We will see him very shortly in many other tournaments, but it's great that he's participating in the FIDE Corporate World Chess Championship. So let's move. I'm going to go back to Anish Giri's game, if you don't mind, Dina, because that one looks
Sure.
spicy, and white is down in exchange, but that king on h8's in the corner, there could be an attack. The engine says white is doing well. What do you think when you look at this position? How do we deliver a checkmate?
Usually, first thing you want to analyze is some sacrifices or the ways how to get to the king, and that's not so easy. You don't see the any easy way there because thanks to the doubled e7 pawn, the f6 square is protected. The e5 pawn is so to be blocking your own bishop, so the diagonal looks weak but stable at the same time. You don't see the clear path here. Perhaps something like h4, h5 could be an idea, bringing the rook somehow to d3 to f3, g3, h3. But yeah, there is definitely an advantage here. The question is how to proceed in a concrete way.
Yeah, that move, rook d3, in the future looks very good. And h4 is multi-purpose. You threaten h5 and make sure you don't get back rank checkmated. So I think that h4 is by far the best move. And when you try to defend against an attack, sometimes you just have to say, I'm going to put all my pieces in front of your attack. Other times you bring a move like rook c8 and try to take over the other side of the board and create problems. So rook d3 was played by Anish. No back rank checkmate just yet, but if that queen lands on e1, that would be a checkmate. Of course, Anish will see that. He is not going to get checkmated. I think that his position is great. He has h4. And as you said, Dina, the rook can go from f3 or g3 or h3. White has tons of options at his disposal. So I think he's going to win this game. I feel pretty confident in his chances here.
Yeah, unless he blunders something, definitely he's gonna win this.
Agreed. And I'm going to pull up the game of Georg Meyer. We're going to switch matches to the Granke match because I see at the corner of my eye the last one played a6, and it's Erste Group trying to take down Granke. And a6 is such a nice move because a pawn chain, I say this very regularly, a pawn chain is only as strong as its base pawn. There is no pawn chain anymore because the pawn went to a6. Now you can just steal the c6 pawn. But I must say, despite the fact that white is up a pawn, black has some very good compensation as this bishop on c1 isn't
Yeah,
out
look
yet.
at that bishop. It's so ridiculous. Okay, now there is a hope with the b pawn moving, but until it moves anywhere, it looks so ridiculous. It's like wasting his time in the bathroom doing God knows what.
Yeah, and I think that Georg should try to consider like rook c3. And the plan that I'm wanting to go for is like rook c3. If you take me, then I can take back, and my bishop is free. I'll take with the d pawn, not to give you a pass pawn. And now if I trade, maybe I can move my rook, get my or just try to get my king around somehow and push my d pawn if your rook moves. So it's a slow approach, but I think Georg can go for it. And he is he's a grandmaster of chess, but he has masterful technique in these types of positions. He thrives in them. I've played him so many times in blitz chess, and he just grinds his opponents down from the slight advantages, and he knows how to nurse that advantage to a full point.
Yeah, it's gonna be a tough game for Laura, but we shall see.
Yes, we shall. Let's go to board two in this matchup. Alina Kashlinskaya with the black pieces. It's locked up on the king side, which is good news for black because that means that white isn't going to go checkmate you. And on the other hand, black at some moment can play f6 or f5 to break open the king side. So the side that controls the tension, the pawn breaks, and usually the side that has the advantage. So I actually like Alina's position. Do you agree, Dina?
Yes, there is a lot of future in this position. There are pawn breaks. There's the very nice knight on c5. I guess the white skin doesn't feel himself that comfortable. Okay, for now there is no attack, but where would you put it?
If you go to g8, then I'm definitely trying to rip open the position at some point with f6 or f5. And I like king h7 just to protect g6 in case. And I like knight b5 because if black is not careful, knight takes d6 will happen. So I imagine b6 is the response here for black.
And look at this a4 pawn, how far it's gone and how many space has it already achieved there.
It looks great. Yeah, it's just taking over space. The rook or the queen can go to a5 at some point to use that square and the space. So I like it. For now, though, of course, the d6 pawn and the c5 knight, are under attack. So need to be watching out for that. So, by the way, Magnus Carlsen did win that final game, and oh gosh,
Already?
I'm gonna pull the position up. Checkmate with a pawn.
Oh wow, that's been fast. That's been pretty fast. Even
Yeah,
though the position looked like the only one way to go, but still,
I
that's
wonder.
Magnus.
I wonder what the line was, what the odds were for checkmating with a pawn, because Unibet, now Kindred, they do sports betting and fantasy sports and all that good stuff. So it would be funny to know what the odds were on that. So checkmate there. Let's keep on going to this position here. Is a board 3 for Gronke against Erste Group. And we see that the bishop on d3 hitting the pawn on h7, the bishop on f4 hitting the knight on d6. But I'm also looking at this pawn on c4, Dina. It feels like this pawn structure could be quite questionable for white.
It doesn't look good. Definitely not for white. It's a total weakness. And look at this rook on c1 in front of 3 pawns. Looks totally ridiculous. What is she even doing there?
Mm-hmm. Although this g6 move changed the evaluation, I'm guessing that I would put my rook on e1 with check. The king has to make a choice. If you go king d7, I just can win a pawn directly by bringing your king up to go rook e6. And even without rook e6, now the pawn c4 is safe, and you can play a4 if you need to, maybe a5 to crack the queen side open, or h4, h5 to crack the king side open. And this pawn situation center is very good for white. And of course, the rook can come to e6, which is the first thing I mentioned.
That's that's a very nice position from the strategy. I think we can learn a lot from this one.
Yeah, I think rook e1 to start with, and then you might have to take this knight d6 because now the pawn c4 is under attack. So I do think that white has a strategic advantage. King f7 does not fall victim to these rook e6 tactics. That's a smart move. But you take on d6, play a4, you get a bind with your pawns and your pieces. So taking the knight off the board is a good choice.
Also, the knight is known to be the best blockader, so getting it off the board could be an interesting idea for white indeed.
Yes, the knight blockading piece, because it sees over the other pieces. If it's a piece blockading that's not a knight, it doesn't see over the rest of the position, and in particular against this pawn on d5. So looks pretty good now for white. At first, I like black's position. Now I'm changing my mind, and I'm going to pick up a Nishikiri's game. Oh, look at this. It's about to end. We have...
Oh, exactly what we predicted. The rook came to the party, and now it's unstoppable.
And queen h5 does not stop the checkmate because queen takes and the rook h7 is
A
mate
very nice
anyway.
checkmate.
So let's see the conclusion. Queen h5 played. He takes. We're about to see a victory for board 1 Vaptir. We see it. Anish Giri on screen. He barely reacts. I think he's just going to check his teammates because he won his game. We need, for Optiver, he's thinking we need the teammates to go. And I'm going to try to find those games. Let's see. I know we were looking at David Pardo Simon before. We'll check in here. Looks like a very complicated, tense endgame where white has more time. So it looks good for white from the practical point of view, but from a positional point of view, black should be okay.
Yeah, black seems to have pretty decent position here with the pawn on d4. It looks super strong, and the knight on c5, the backward pawn on c2, which is about to get exchanged.
Okay, and it's taken, and you can just take back. So it looks like you're liquidating, simplifying the position. That's probably a good thing for Petropop, and Optiver needs white to win this game. They absolutely must have a victory on this board. Otherwise, they can't come back and make it to the playoff tomorrow.
Yes, that's the plan for black. And what's the next board showing us?
Trying to look just to see. It could be that the games are done. I am trying my best. There's so many games happening at the same time, so many different teams. So I'm doing my best. Oh, here we go. I found it. Peter Lizak. That's bad news for Optiver. The last move I just saw was, look at this, e6, And what is happening to this king?
The
Just being
total
ripped apart.
breakthrough.
Oh gosh. And after f takes e6, white does have less than a minute, but it's plus 12 here, which means that there must be a win in the next few moves. Oh gosh. Do I take on g7? Do I play queen e4 check first?
There's also queen e6.
Queen e6 with rook d7 to follow. That looks crushing. I'm trying to think how white can even mess this up at this point because it looks overwhelming. And the Morgan Stanley
Well, you better
team,
not ask yourself this question because from everything that we saw, we can say that absolutely anything is possible.
That's true. Although this pawn on g7, bishop supporting it, king on h7, this looks pretty bad for black. It should be something checkmating in the very near future. And also, white's not down any material. Normally, to get a position like this, you have to sacrifice a piece, and it's actually even material. So this is really bad news for Optiver. And I think this one is going to conclude soon in the favor of Morgan Stanley Hungary, who they played a great team tournament thus far. Strong players from board 1 through board 4, and they've led the group from the start. I'm going to quickly turn our attention elsewhere. Let's go here. I don't know which matchup this is from. So I'm just trying my best.
Looks like a losing rook endgame here for white. Totally losing. There's 3 pawns up, and we have 2 connected past pawns, a6 and b5.
Mm-hmm.
The f5 pawn is about to fall pretty soon. Yeah, this looks like a winning line for totally winning situation for black.
Yes, and completely winning for black. It's 3 extra pawns. It is board 3 in Spare versus Europe Investment Bank. So this is, excuse me, board 4. My apologies. In that matchup, so this is a top board matchup. Oh, and you see the evaluation bar dip. That means king g4. Wait a second. Maybe we spoke too soon. This pawn on g5, and it looks like the player with the black piece is misleading. Not 1823, 2400 plus. Wait a sec. If I take
no way, rook f6, you cannot.
Right, because a rook g4 check to show that very quickly. Nice trick there.
Rook g4.
And then the king would take here and the pawn would promote. So king h5 played, and now there's some problems. This pawn's under attack.
We have to defend it.
And this king is coming in. I think black has botched this.
No way. It's still 2 pawns up in the worst case. It must be winning for black. I do believe so.
I think white might win this game.
Oh no, no way.
Take on f6.
Oh my.
Okay, this first, and then take on f6 next. White might win this game despite being
no
3
way,
pawns down.
3 pawns up. You cannot.
Okay, check on b7. You can check on e2. Rook b6 is actually tempting to win the a6 pawn first.
But there is the king e5.
But then rook
e4.
e6. Oh my gosh, you have rook e6 check. What, black was up 3 pawns and losing every single pawn? Oh no.
This is so painful.
Oh my gosh. This is unfortunate because now you take the f6 pawn. Every single pawn is lost.
Oh my. Oh, this is a total drama.
And white wins. And white wins. And white's rating 2241. Black's rating 2418. So black was the higher rated player and up 3 pawns when we tuned in. And it's this move b4. Whoa. Pushing your passed pawn. We're always told that. Push the pawn. But the king walked forward and was able to just win this pawn here. And now the black king is in trouble after f6. The rook is very active for white. And how quickly the tables turned here. Not just holding, but taking every single last pawn. And black just resigned because king e5. Check. King d5. King takes f6. The rook moves away. We have cut the king off and our passed pawn runs.
You know what? It's an endgame, and one should never neglect the importance of the king in the endgame. And here, what we see in this game, the importance of the king in the endgame, and it costed black a point.
And I actually realized that I looked at the ratings in reverse. It's 2043, not 2400. So I just reversed it. My apologies, everyone. Black's rating is in the 2000 range, and white was the higher rated player. So let's move on to the game between Optiver. Oh my gosh, Optiver is getting that game here, but they lost on board 2. Yes, they did lose on board 2, so it's too little, too late. But the time advantage now is turned into a material advantage for David Pardo-Simon. So this is going to be Morgan Stanley Hungary. They are going to win this group, it seems.
Yeah, this knight endgame seems to be totally winning. The knight endgames are known to be the same. Oh my! Knight takes e4. There's no way to stop it.
Oh my gosh, that move knight f4, which looks so reasonable to
You can try the
offer.
check, but there is the king to d4
Yes.
or king to e3.
Whoa, trying to move the pawns because knight c3, king d4 would have went back, and the knight sacrificed those pawns, as you were saying, and the
And now
pawns
there's.
don't feel quick enough. You just chase them down, king e4, push
I
the
was
e
just
pawn.
about to say how winning it was to play the knight endgames because they were exactly the same as the pawn endgames. And here we go. White blundered the sacrifice of the knight against the pawns and had to give back the knight in order to try something. And
Yeah,
here we go.
king e5, for example. If f6, the king comes back to e6. Although
King g6.
it's getting pretty close, right? It looks a
Oh
bit
yeah,
scary.
it's a little bit dangerous
Oh,
here.
1 second, 1
Oh,
second.
there's a
Ooh,
check. There's a check.
you gotta move. You gotta
Knight
move.
e4.
2 seconds. King d7, good move. If the
Okay.
f7 pawn pushes, you take this pawn. And if king g7, there's knight e8 check. Oh, drew because white lost on time and black has no mating material.
Oh, that's amazing.
Oh my gosh, and the king was
That's
coming to e8
amazing.
and knight f7. So it was a
Would
draw on the
it
board.
was it in the real game? It would have never be counted as a draw.
No,
That's a
because
specialchess.com rules.
yes, because there's mating material. So actually, I wonder, if this is under the auspices of FIDE, if this actually could be ruled a victory. But either way, I don't think it impacts the group because Morgan Stanley Hungary was already on top. So I'm just going to see if we have any games remaining, what the situation is like. It looks like we have our scoreboard. No, the results are not quite in yet. So let's just take a look. I'm trying to see where to go to from here. And all right, so it's a whirlwind. There's so many matches happening at the same time. And wow, just wow, that game there at the end is still just losing on time in that position. And my gosh, I need to take a breath because some of those games, that game with the rook end game, up 3 pawns to lose all 4 of those pawns, it's just such a sad turn of events. And it happens in speed chess, right? Dina, we've had positions where you're completely winning. I mean, even Maria Muzichuk, not to pick on her, she blundered a clear rook earlier today, and then she missed the checkmate.
And then missed the checkmating too.
Right, so it's how quickly we forget certain things, but just a wild turn of events. Everybody, we are going to take a quick break. But before we do, I want to remind everybody that this is an event raising awareness, raising funds for great initiatives for charity. So please, if you can, see that donation bar on screen. The panel beneath you is for chess people with disabilities, chess veterans, and chess and education. So do get involved if you can. And the schedule. We will update all the results, remind you of those, but there will be more chess in the Western pool, 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. Do yourself a favor, look at the time, translate it to your time zone so you can come and watch. I will be having the call for that as well. That is in 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. That's 8:30 Eastern. And the results are being updated. There's so many people working behind the scenes. I would be remiss not to thank everybody. I know there's a lot going on. We're running from game to game, match to match, but that's the format here. There's 6 different groups all happening at the same time to put together an event of this magnitude with all of these groups, the cooperation of FIDE and chess.com, all the arbiters who are spending their weekend working with the teams, ensuring fair play. Dina, from an organizational standpoint, this is a massive success, even with how tricky it can be.
Absolutely. And I keep reminding it to us, it's the very first edition of the Cooperative World Chess Championship. And this is a very important achievement for FIDE itself because it brings way more sponsors to our sport. And who knows, maybe one day we'll be as competitive as tennis or football.
Yeah, and I do hope that everyone had fun, most of all, because this is an event for fun, although we do have the updated results for those top boards. So it's fun, but we have to talk about the competitive aspects. You see here, Spare, they just can't be stopped. They won 4-0 for the second round in a row. They win their group in Group A. We see Granke does defeat Erste Group, and that means that they will move on in Group B. Optiver goes down, but with the fight, and looks like Petrofap wins. So that win on time, chess.com may rule it as draw. but FIDE rules it a victory. So Petrograd
Absolutely.
wins that game.
That's what I thought.
It doesn't impact anything. Morgan Stanley was going to win the group regardless. In Group D over there, Sberbank Trade Union, spearheaded by Anton Korbov. We saw initially it looked like a tactic available for his opponent, and yet he goes on to win that game, and Sberbank wins the group. Sberbank Trade Union, I should say. ERG, they stay atop their standings, it seems, by beating Gordic. And finally, RFSO Lokomotiv, they do defeat State Bank of Mongolia. I'm not sure if it's enough to overtake them because State Bank of Mongolia was ahead before the final round took place. Wow, just wow. So, I mean, just so much to take in, so many different teams taking part. I am very appreciative of the opportunity to cover this with you, Dina. I had a lot of fun today. I know it was a whirlwind. I know we were bopping around a lot, but I really do need to thank you for being such a great co-commentator.
So did I. Thank you so much, Robert. That's been a totally exciting 3 rounds that we witnessed today, round 4, 5, and 6. Tomorrow we shall see the playoffs. I bet that's going to be even more exciting.
It's going to be extremely exciting. It's also going to be easier to follow because we only have 8 teams rather than as many as we did. We thank everybody for their patience, for their viewership. It means a lot to both me and us, Dina, and everybody who's put this tournament together, but just the chess community. We're really grateful to have the viewership and the support. And for those of you who have been donating, that is really generous of you. And it goes without saying that you're making a difference. And for chess for people with disabilities, for the veteran support, and for chess and education, it means the world. So thank you to everybody. Thanks to the companies who are taking part, and for the companies who are still involved, the winners of each group. I will see them tomorrow, but I'll also be back for the groups later tonight. The tournament goes on, and the show continues. So thank you, everybody. We'll be back later for more from the FIDE Corporate World Chess Championship.